Chapter 1583. As for Yuan Bo and the others, although they were very polite on the surface, they were merciless in their attacks. When Xiao Hua heard that this selection was about selecting disciples to go out and train, he immediately took out the token and took the initiative to teleport. Nonsense. It's not like I've reached the late stage of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. What's the point of going out to train? He might as well hide in the formation in the cave and focus on improving his cultivation. Fortunately, not long after encountering Wang Yunxiao and the others, Xiao Hua killed several mid-12th layer Qi refining disciples and finally encountered the disciple that the Foundation establishment cultivator mentioned. But when he saw the slightly short disciple in front of him, Xiao Hua was stunned. It wasn't that this disciple was too handsome, nor was it that this disciple was too ugly. Rather, it was that this disciple's cultivation was actually at the early stage of the 12th level of Qi refining. Of course, it was the initial stage that was close to the middle stage, not the initial stage that Xiao Hua had just stepped into. Damn it, are you kidding me? Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As it turned out, that Foundation establishment cultivator wanted him to be this disciple's supporting character. Wasn't it just going out to train? Was there a need to make such a big move? With this kind of cultivation, even if he went out, wouldn't he be a wandering soul in the hands of others? He might as well cultivate more in the Imperial Thunder sect. Thinking about it, Xiao Hua no longer hesitated. He activated his magic power and teleported himself out. Behind him, the disciple didn't have any shock on his face. It was as if everything was normal. After a few more rounds of selection, the disciples of Diligent Thunder Hall said that the results of the selection would be out in a few days. When the time came, the results would be sent to their respective masters, and they were dismissed. However, Xiao Hua didn't have any intention of going out to gain experience, so he naturally didn't care about the results. As soon as the disciple of Diligent Thunder Hall finished speaking, while the other disciples were still discussing, he took the lead and left Diligent Thunder Hall. Behind him, Sun Shu chased after him for a while, but was stopped by the other senior sisters. Only then did he stop with some hesitation. Xiao Hua left the Thunder Immortal Peak and flew directly to the 10,000 Thunder Valley without saying a word. On the way, Xiao Hua calculated with his fingers and couldn't help but sigh. Damn it. It took me a month just to get someone to copy the lightning evasion technique. It's really not worth it. With this 1 month's worth of cultivation, I'm afraid my cultivation will improve a lot, right? However, on second thought, Xiao Hua rejoiced again. In this selection round, he had truly fought with 200 disciples for over 200 rounds. This wasn't something that could be cultivated through meditation. Hee, I wonder if Master is still angry? It had already been a month. However, Master is busy with work. I'm afraid he's in the Myriad Thunder Valley again, right? Xiao Hua thought as he looked at the Immortal's cave in front of him. During this month, Xiao Hua had comprehended quite a bit of the lightning escape technique in the illusory array. The first level of the lightning escape technique, hibernating lightning, could be considered to have made some progress. Sure enough, there was no one in Helpless Immortal's cave. Helpless and Zhuo Minghui were both absent. Only Xiang Yang came out of the Immortal's cave when he heard Xiao Hua's arrival. Hee, eldest senior brother, is Master still angry? Xiao Hua asked as soon as they met. I don't know either. After Master left last time, he never came back. Master's wife also went out a few days ago. Xiang Yang shook his head and said, Little junior brother, why are you here today? Hee, look. Xiao Hua took out the jade slip and handed it over. His face was immensely proud of himself, looking like he was showing off. Xiang Yang was puzzled. He used his divine sense to take a look. His face was filled with shock as he hurriedly said, This is the most complete lightning escape technique of my Imperial Thunder sect's Heavenly Thunder Palace. How did you get it? Eldest senior brother. It's naturally little brother's sect master's command token? Xiao Hua kept him in suspense and didn't explain. Quickly return this thing. This Heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning escape technique is the origin of my Imperial Thunder sect's lightning escape technique. Without the sect master's permission, you can't practice it. Speaking up to here, Xiang Yang came to a realization and said unhappily, This is probably the sect master's permission, right? Hee, Eldest senior brother actually also thought of it? Xiao Hua touched his nose and said with a smile, "You mischievous brat." Xiang Yang waved his hand and threw it to Xiao Hua, saying, "Master has always been thinking about this lightning escape technique for many years. When he sees this jade slip of yours, even if he's angry, it will immediately vanish like smoke in thin air." Saying so, Xiang Yang clapped his hand and took out a lightning sound transmitting talisman, about to send it out. Xiao Hua, however, stopped him and said with a smile, "Eldest senior brother, say, if we personally deliver it to Master, won't he be even more pleasantly surprised?" That's true." Xiang Yang nodded, his face also looking eager to give it a try. He said with a smile, "We'll go over right now." However, just as Xiao Hua and Xiao Hua flew up into the air, Xiang Yang suddenly stopped. "What's wrong, eldest senior brother?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. "Inappropriate, inappropriate." Xiang Yang said inappropriate twice in a row, shaking his head and saying, "The thunder of Myriad Thunder Valley is the most harmful to one's Tao. That year, it was precisely because of that I missed my foundation establishment. This is also the reason why Master didn't take you there all along." Hearing this, Xiao Hua was even more curious. He said with a smile, "Master has already passed on to little brother the lightning evasion technique of Myriad Thunder Valley. Every time little brother comes to Master's place, little brother uses it. Little brother isn't even afraid of silent thunder, so why would little brother be afraid of the thunder of Myriad Thunder Valley?" Xiang Yang still shook his head. "It's not the same. It's not the same. The reason why Myriad Thunder Valley is called Myriad Thunder Valley is because there are 10,000 kinds of heavenly thunder inside. It's the most embodiment of the might of heaven and earth. Every cultivator who goes to Myriad Thunder Valley is subdued by the might of heaven and earth. If they don't prepare in advance, their Tao heart or Tao foundation will definitely be damaged. You haven't built your foundation yet, so it's best if you don't go there." Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then said in a low voice, "How about, we don't go too close? You can just call Master out. And if Master sees me personally going there, even if he's angry, he'll be appeased." Seeing Xiang Yang still hesitating, Xiao Hua patted his chest and said, "Eldest senior brother, if Master punishes me, little brother will bear all responsibility." "Nonsense," Xiang Yang berated, waving his hand. "Let's go." "Haha," Xiao Hua laughed as he followed Xiang Yang towards the direction of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Although Xiang Yang's Immortal's Cave was already within the range of Myriad Thunder Valley, there was still an extremely long distance to Myriad Thunder Valley. With Xiang Yang's flying speed, they actually flew for more than an hour. "Good heavens, so far," Xiao Hua criticized inwardly. "No wonder no one is willing to come. Moreover, there's soundless thunder all around here. Who would come?" Xiao Hua secretly took out the command tablet. Sure enough, on the map of the command tablet, the surroundings were precisely dangerous. Rumble. Faintly, the sound of 10,000 horses galloping could be heard from afar. Immediately after, this sound was sharp and concentrated, as if knocking on the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart. "Little junior brother, be careful." Although Xiang Yang knew that Xiao Hua knew how to avoid lightning, he still reminded him. Xiao Hua urged his magic power, increasing the power of his lightning avoidance technique by more than 30%. Thus, that sound was still in his ears, but Xiao Hua's heart was no longer heavy. After flying for a while, the sound of thunder became even stranger. One moment, it was waves crashing against the shore. The next moment, it was the sound of drums, and the next moment, it was some kind of hailstone falling to the ground. All kinds of thunder continuously entered his ears, and all kinds of chaos also stepped into Xiao Hua's mind. His lightning avoidance technique gradually became ineffective. His hands and feet were somewhat limp, and his magic power was also difficult to sustain. Eldest senior brother. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be too stubborn and called out, "Little brother doesn't dare to go forward anymore." Good. Seeing this, Xiang Yang stopped flying, clapped his hand, and sent out a thunder sound transmitting talisman, waiting in midair. Seeing the sound transmitting talisman fly away, Xiao Hua sat cross-legged in midair, closed his eyes, and pondered. Although he had just reached the early stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm, in terms of magic power, he wasn't much worse than Xiangyang. However, Xiangyang was fine in this thunder, but he couldn't. The problem was very obvious. It was the difference between true Qi and true essence. It seems that I still have to hurry up and build my foundation, Xiaohua thought, secretly making up his mind. But at this moment, the silent thunder was like a tide that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, pressing down. At the same time, the thunder in his ears was also like a golden spear and armored horse rushing over. The two different types of thunder overlapped, making Xiaohua suddenly feel that his small boat, which was just barely cruising a moment ago, was in danger of being drowned in an instant. This is bad. Xiaohua was alarmed. He knew that if he lost his mind, his Dao heart would definitely be damaged, and his cultivation would definitely regress. The matter of building his foundation, Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless and didn't have time to say anything. His figure suddenly rose, and he used the lightning escape technique, flying backwards with all his strength. Xiangyang naturally sensed Xiaohua's strange movements, but he saw that Xiaohua actually used the lightning escape technique, and it was dormant lightning. That speed was also much faster than his own. He was even more astonished and actually stared blankly on the spot. Only when Xiaohua's figure almost disappeared did Xiangyang come to his senses. With an extremely complicated expression on his face, he used the flight technique to chase after him. Although Xiaohua used the lightning escape technique to fly in midair, he was still slower than the thunder by half a second. In the first instant, all the thunder drowned him out. Xiaohua's mind was suddenly in chaos. The thunder rushed into his ears and rushed into his Naiwen palace. At this crucial moment, in Xiaohua's Naiwen palace, the traces of the Buddha's Sarira actually sparkled under the impact of the thunder. At the same time, a faint sound of Sanskrit came from the head of the Buddha's Sarira, covering up a lot of the thunder. Xiaohua's mind was immediately pulled out from the chaos. Motherfucker, this 10,000 Thunder Valley is indeed powerful. Xiaohua's figure didn't stop, and he thought with lingering fear. When the thunder in his ears quieted down, and his mind also stabilized, Xiaohua hurriedly checked his cultivation. Fortunately, there weren't any obscure signs. This Buddha's Sarira. When Xiaohua saw the Buddha's Sarira in his mind, he actually discovered that the extremely faint imprint under the impact of the thunder had become slightly heavier. In other words, the thunder in this 10,000 Thunder Valley was beneficial to the cultivation of the exquisite leaf scripture. Xiaohua's mind that had just calmed down couldn't help but feel refreshed, and he secretly laughed. As the saying goes, the old man loses his horse, who knows if it's a blessing in disguise. The thunder in this 10,000 Thunder Valley is harmful to Ai's cultivation, but I didn't expect it to be a great supplement for the cultivation of the Buddha's Sarira. -7. Chapter 1584. Junior brother, behind Xiaohua, Xiangyang also flew over. He shouted with concern, How are you now? Your cultivation. Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, Thank you, senior brother. Fortunately, you discovered me early and I escaped quickly, so I didn't suffer any injuries. Xiangyang heard and finally let out a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to speak, helpless divine sense swept over. Then, helpless figure quickly flew from afar. Seeing Xiaohua here, his face immediately became gloomy and he scolded, Why are you here? Let's go. As he spoke, he waved his big sleeve and brought Xiaohua outside in the time it took to smoke a pack of cigarettes. Without waiting for his figure to land, Helpless turned his head and scolded, Xiangyang, what kind of senior brother are you? Xiaohua is still young and doesn't know anything. How can you let him fool around and bring him here? Needless to say, Helpless already understood that it was Xiaohua who pestered Xiangyang. Master, this is all Disciple's fault. Disciple. Xiaohua quickly explained. Shut up, Helpless said angrily. How do you know how dangerous this 10,000 Thunder Valley is? Master. Xiangyang thought of Xiaohua's danger just now, and his face also became embarrassed. He lowered his head and said, It's all Disciple's negligence. Master, look. Xiaohua didn't dare to let Helpless get angry and quickly took out the jade slip. Helpless also knew what Xiaohua meant. He fiercely glared at Xiangyang and took the jade slip. After he finished reading, his face unconsciously showed a surprised expression. This lightning escape technique was granted to him by Master Qian Lei several years ago, but when this technique was placed in front of him, Helpless' heart couldn't help but beat wildly. After a while, Helpless calmed down. Xiaohua looked at his face and quickly said, "Disciple wanted to give Master a surprise, so I dragged Senior Brother here." Senior Brother obviously didn't want to. Forget it. Helpless waved his hand and looked at him unhappily. You have a lot of ideas. Why didn't you cultivate in the eastern ridge and run around? Hee, Master, didn't Disciple listen to your orders and go to the Thunder Palace's technique pavilion to find a suitable technique? I thought about how I didn't get the lightning escape technique for Master, so I quickly acted. Since the sect Master has promised the cultivation technique to me, then whether I take it or not, the cultivation technique is still there and it belongs to me. What's the difference between taking it earlier or later? Helplessly, he said with a taut face. This. Xiaohua scratched his head helplessly when he heard the awkwardly spoken words. All right, all of you should go back as soon as possible. He waved his sleeve helplessly and said, although this place is far from the myriad Thunder Valley, there are still sounds of thunder. When Xiangyang returns, tell Xiaohua the key to cultivating the 12th layer of refining qi. As he spoke, he flew away without the slightest hesitation. Sigh, really? Master doesn't even say any warm words. Xiaohua waited helplessly until they were far away before he grumbled. To think that I ran so far with eldest martial brother. Let's go. Xiangyang's face remained calm when he saw this. It was as if he was used to this. He said indifferently as his body floated in the air. All right. Xiaohua curled his lips and followed behind Xiangyang. Seeing Xiaohua obediently use ordinary flying techniques to follow behind him, Xiangyang's heart was filled with complex feelings. He clearly reminded himself not to be jealous of this junior martial brother, but his heart was still somewhat uncomfortable. That's right, hibernating lightning. That was the first layer of the Imperial Thunder Sect's lightning evasion technique. Xiangyang had already known about it when he entered the Imperial Thunder Sect. It was something that couldn't be cultivated without a thunder attribute physique. Coincidentally, he also had a thunder attribute. However, he didn't enter the Heavenly Thunder Palace and could only cultivate the lightning evasion technique of the Seismic Thunder Palace. However, Xiangyang had cultivated the incomplete lightning evasion technique of the Seismic Thunder Palace for a long time, but he still wasn't proficient in it. Normally, when he used it, it wasn't as fast as ordinary flying techniques. Of course, he also understood that even with his aptitude, he was only at the entry level of the first layer of Seismic Thunder Palace's lightning evasion. However, compared to the many disciples who couldn't cultivate the lightning evasion or couldn't enter the entry level, he was already considered pretty good. But when he saw Xiaohua use hibernating lightning, this little bit of vanity was instantly struck flying into pieces. The lightning evasion technique was something that only Foundation Establishment disciples could cultivate. Moreover, it also required a thunder attribute physique to cultivate. Why didn't it work on this little junior brother of his? Xiangyang could only smile bitterly. He really didn't want to ask Xiaohua another word, not only because this was Xiaohua's privacy, but also because this was the reason why Xiangyang felt embarrassed to be Xiaohua's eldest senior brother. An incompetent eldest senior brother. Previously, he had always wanted to properly cultivate Xiaohua to make up for the regret in his master's heart. At this time, Xiangyang's heart was somewhat unbalanced. When he returned to the Immortal's Cave, Xiangyang was different from his usual self. He was originally a man of few words, but now he was even more stingy with his words. Even when Xiaohua asked him some questions about cultivation, he was somewhat unwilling to say more. Xiaohua thought that Xiangyang had been reprimanded by his master and was in a bad mood, so he didn't say anything more. He bowed to Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian and took his leave, returning to the eastern ridge. Xiaohua didn't know about Xiangyang's abnormality, but how could Yin Qinglian not know? After Xiaohua left, she carefully inquired. At first, Xiang Yang didn't want to say, but when he saw the concern in Yin Qinglian's eyes, he finally let out a long sigh and spoke of the jealousy in his heart. That jealousy seemed to be a malignant tumor. When he spoke of it, Xiang Yang's heart relaxed a lot. What? Little junior brother can actually use the lightning evasion? And it's the hibernating thunder evasion? When Yin Qinglian heard this, she was also extremely shocked. As a middle-stage Foundation establishment disciple of the mythical Thunder Palace, how could she not know the importance and difficulty of the hibernating thunder evasion? Can you be sure you didn't see wrongly? Yin Qinglian asked, half believing and half doubting. Xiang Yang smiled bitterly. This husband's cultivation may not be high, but I still have a discerning eye. Moreover, little junior brother also gave the heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning evasion to master. So this husband's previous bit of suspicion also vanished like smoke in thin air. Naturally, I can be sure. Haha, although Yin Qinglian's face was still somewhat shocked, a smile appeared on her face. Since Xiaohua's aptitude is so outstanding, you should be happy that our myriad Thunder Valley has such an outstanding disciple. Why are you jealous of Xiaohua? Xiang Yang shook his head. This husband doesn't even know in his heart. It feels like a child who originally needed my protection suddenly doesn't need me anymore. I don't have the slightest bit of value in my existence. My heart feels empty. I really hope he doesn't have this kind of magical ability and still needs this husband's guidance. Husband. Yin Qinglian walked forward and used her arm to hold Xiang Yang. The two of them slowly walked out of the cave. Yin Qinglian looked at the mountain forest in front of the cave and saw the pine trees billowing in the wind. She said with a smile, husband has always been under master's majesty and has almost never had a chance to breathe. Coupled with the fact that you haven't been able to make a breakthrough in your cultivation for a long time, the confidence in your heart, I'm afraid, has decreased a lot. Now that you finally have Xiaohua to give you guidance, you can be considered to have found some of the feeling of being an elder. Now that you've discovered that Xiaohua doesn't need your guidance at all in some areas, it's like he suddenly fell from the clouds to the ground. Naturally, there's a contrast. Xiang Yang looked at the mottled mountain forest under the sunlight and didn't answer. Yin Qinglian turned her head to look at his expression and said again, in fact, not to mention our thunderous palace, even in mythical Thunder Palace, Gen Thunder Palace, and the other 7 great Thunder Palaces, there are more than 1,000 young disciples with better aptitudes than you. You're not jealous of others, but why are you jealous of your little junior martial brother? Normally, so many senior martial brothers laugh at you, but your heart is as calm as water, unperturbed by great waves. Why do you feel uncomfortable when the people close to you are stronger than you? If you treat little junior martial brother as our nephew, do you want him to be at the early stage of Foundation establishment like you for the rest of his life? Don't want him to surpass you? Yin Qinglian struck while the iron was hot. The pupil surpasses the master. This is what you said. If you don't have a broad mind, how can you teach Xiang Zhili, who's in the deification realm? Ha ha ha, hearing this, Xiang Yang raised his head and laughed heartily. Turn a blind eye, turn a blind eye. People all hide their heads in their bosoms and pretend they don't see. Only this way can their hearts be magnanimous. But is this really magnanimous? As soon as I raise my head and look at the affairs around me, my heart immediately loses balance. I boast that I've already sharpened myself to be smooth, but there's still a little in my heart. If it weren't for my wife's reminder, how could I untie this knot in my heart? It's fine as long as my husband understands, Yin Qinglian said with a smile. With this little junior martial brother in my 10,000 Thunder Valley, do you think we'll be afraid of being bullied by others in the future? Ha ha ha. Xiang Yang pulled her hand and turned around to walk back to his immortal's cave. He said in a low voice, who cares about Xiaohua? My family's Xiang Zhili is the true pillar of 10,000 Thunder Valley. A shy expression appeared on Yin Qinglian's face, and she followed Xiang Yang back to his immortal's cave. At this moment, Xiaohua was flying in the air. He was also bewildered. He didn't understand why his eldest martial brother was acting so strangely. After returning to Eastern Ridge and opening the formation, Xiaohua immediately returned to his pill room and warmed up the pill furnace, preparing to concoct soul-gathering pills and cultivate to the 12th layer of the aura-refining realm. According to Xiaohua's thoughts, Without the fire-type spiritual energy of the fire essence flame crystal, it took about 2 years to go from the middle of the 11th layer of the aura refining realm to the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Wouldn't it take him 5 to 10 years to go from the early stage of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm to the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm? Moreover, there was still the legendary Great Circle of the aura refining realm. Xiaohua also wanted to solidify his aura refining foundation. When he thought about how he still had to cultivate for 10 years before he could step into the foundation establishment realm and seek revenge on Jiang Jiantong of the 100 Herbs Gate, Xiaohua really didn't want to waste a single moment. He only wanted to close his eyes and meditate, quickly finishing these 10 years of hard work. However, things often didn't go according to one's wishes. On the 3rd day after Xiaohua warmed up the pill furnace and threw the medicinal herbs inside, a messaging talisman was sent to the Eastern Ridges Formation. Xiaohua opened the formation in a very bad mood. The 1,000-mile messaging talisman flew to Xiaohua's eyes like a red-crowned crane. When Xiaohua clenched his hand, Shue's voice came from inside. Xiaohua, I heard from Senior Sun Shu that you also participated in the selection of the Feather Immortal Assembly. How are your results? Do you have the qualifications to go out and gain experience? -7. Chapter 1585. Also, Xiaohua, how did you cultivate? I heard from Senior Martial Sister Sun Shu that you're already in the early stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. It's only been a year, and you've already advanced. It seems that the day of foundation establishment is just around the corner. You have to wait for me to build our foundation together. I don't want to call you senior in front of you. Nonsense, your master is a golden core cultivator. I'm already very grateful that I don't call you senior according to seniority. Who dares to call you senior? Xiaohua smiled and also took out a 1,000-mile sound-transmitting talisman. After saying a few words, he waved his hand and opened the formation, letting the sound-transmitting talisman fly away. However, just as Xiaohua had just sat down and had yet to strike the spell on the pill furnace, there was movement in the array again. Damn it, are you done yet? Xiaohua got up in anger and opened the formation. Sure enough, another sound-transmitting talisman flew over. Who's so bored? Xiaohua impatiently pinched the sound-transmitting talisman with his hand. Unexpectedly, the sound-transmitting talisman was Helplessness's voice. Come here. Xiaohua finally noticed that this sound-transmitting talisman was a lightning sound-transmitting talisman. It was the sound-transmitting talisman that Helplessness and Xiang Yang often used. Master, what are you calling me for? Don't you know that my pill furnace just started melting? Xiaohua muttered to himself in a very bad mood. Then, he looked at the medicinal liquid inside the pill furnace and clapped his hand. The formation flag of the Heavenly Fire Formation was held in his hand. He activated the magic power in his hand and waved the formation flag, opening the formation in the pill room. A layer of ripples appeared in the air and quickly covered the pill furnace, not leaving a trace behind. Soon after, Xiaohua put away the formation flag and opened the formation, flying straight to the Myriad Thunder Valley. When he arrived at Helplessness's cave in the Myriad Thunder Valley, Helplessness and the other 3 were all there. The 4 people's 8 eyes had been staring at Xiaohua since he entered the cave. Was it strange? Was it a question? Was it gratification? Or was it a surprise? That master's wife. Xiaohua's eyes turned, not knowing what to do with his hands and feet. He asked Zhuo Minghui for help. What's the matter? Hee, you're very good. Xiaohua, master's wife is very gratified. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Xiaohua turned his head to look at his helplessly squinted eyes, as if he had just finished drinking the spirit wine. He smiled apologetically and said, Master, why did you call this disciple over? Isn't your disciple cultivating right now? Time is spirit stones. Don't delay this disciple's foundation building. Helplessly curling his lips, he clapped his hands and said, Minghui, pour your husband another cup of wine. Husband, you've already drunk 3 cups today. I'm afraid it's not suitable for you to drink anymore, right? Although Zhuo Minghui said this, she still got up and went to the inner mansion. Eldest senior brother, what exactly is going on? Xiaohua turned his head and looked at Xiang Yang. At this time, Xiangyang was no longer as strange as before, but there was still a complicated expression in his eyes. He stared at Xiaohua and said, "Little junior brother, Master really didn't choose the wrong person." Fine, Xiaohua didn't ask any more questions. He lowered his eyebrows and sat there, quietly listening to the helpless instructions. A moment later, Zhuo Minghui brought the spirit wine over. She waved her hand helplessly, and a trace of dark green wine flew into the jade cup. She raised her head and drank it. After a long while, a dark red color appeared on her face. She let out a long sigh and said, "Xiaohua, you've done a good thing. You've really made my myriad Thunder Valley proud." A good thing? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. Didn't I just give Master the lightning evasion technique? But when he thought of the lightning evasion technique, Xiaohua immediately understood. The Feather Immortal Assembly. Of course, it must be that the disciple who participated in the Feather Immortal Assembly had a result, so she had no choice but to say this. However, when he thought of going out to gain experience, Xiaohua's helplessly suspended mood immediately fell to the bottom. He didn't want to leave the stable cultivation environment of the Eastern Mountain Range and become a loose cultivator again. "Master," just as Xiaohua was about to speak, he sighed helplessly and said, "It's all my fault for being busy with the matters of the myriad Thunder Valley and not thinking about you. It's my fault. Fortunately, you were a loose cultivator before, so you're quite opinionated. In the future, you can make your own decisions about these matters." "Haha, Master. You don't need to think too much. Little junior brother is still in Jinlei Palace right now, so there are many things that he can't discuss with you in time. Besides, the disciples who participated in the Feather Immortal Assembly were mainly at the late stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. Xiaohua just broke through to the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm, so how could he participate?" "That, Master." Xiaohua couldn't help but interrupt. "How did you know that I participated in the selection? Did the result come out?" "Haha, of course." Helplessly laughing, he clapped his hands and took out a red jade slip. He said with a smile, "This morning, a disciple of the Thunderous Palace sent a message, saying that there was something important. I thought it was something important, but it was actually the good news that you passed the selection." I passed the selection?" Xiaohua was stunned. He shook his head like a rattle drum and said, "This is somewhat impossible. Take a look at it." Helplessly waved his hand and the jade slip flew to Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua took it and read it with his divine sense. Of course, it said clearly, Thunderous Palace disciple Xiaohua obtained the 20th place in the Battle of Magical Powers in Jinlei Palace. He passed the selection and obtained the right to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. In 10 months, we will meet at Jinlei Palace's Spring Thunder Palace to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Damn it, 20th place. I seem to have heard Yuan Bo and the others say that only the 20th place will go. I am actually the last one. Xiaohua muttered in his heart. He returned the jade slip to helplessly and shook his head again like a rattle drum. He said, I'm not going. Why would I participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly for no reason? If I have the time, I might as well cultivate for a few more days in the Eastern Ridge. I'm not going. You dare. Helplessly was furious. He stood up and said, if you don't want to go, why didn't you discuss it with me or your senior brother? You decided on your own and when to sign up? Fortunately, you didn't lose face in the Myriad Thunder Valley and passed the selection. You're not going again. What are you trying to do? Xiaohua felt wronged. He said, Master, I also don't know what the selection is about. Moreover, I just want to return a favor. Zhuo Minghui was careful. She said with a smile, Husband, Xiaohua wants to cultivate wholeheartedly. Isn't it because he wants to build his foundation earlier? That's right. However, it seems that Xiaohua still has something to say. Listen to it. Speak. Helplessly sat down and waved his hand. He looked as if he expected better from Xiaohua. Therefore, Xiaohua told him the whole story. In the end, he said, I just wanted to play with them. I just wanted to lose to that disciple in the end. I never thought, I don't even know what the selection is about. Oh, so that's how it is. Helplessly's face became gloomy. He looked at the cave abode for a while and said in a deep voice, "It seems that you're just going to serve as a foil to the others." "Yes, I know. I asked for their help, so I naturally have to repay them." Xiaohua said hurriedly. I know. Helplessly waved his hand again unhappily. "I just don't know if that disciple," Xiangyang said in a low voice. Helplessly glared at him and said, "Don't worry. Since they want to handle this matter, they'll naturally make the appropriate arrangements." Even Xiaohua, an early-stage 12th layer qi refining disciple, was used as a foil. "How many foils are there?" "Yes, when I was fighting, I saw many mid-stage 12th layer qi refining disciples," Xiaohua said hurriedly. Helplessly tilted his head and looked at Xiaohua. He asked curiously, How did you pass?" Of course I relied on flying," Xiaohua said without hesitation. "Damn it, you're really losing face for my 10,000 Thunder Valley," Helplessly cursed. He naturally knew that Xiaohua could fly very fast. Even the early-stage foundation establishment disciples of Splendid Sect, Qiqiao Sect, and Xuanyan School couldn't catch up to him. Those peak-stage 12th layer qi refining disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect were nothing. What can I do? I just have to wait to lose to that disciple. As for the others, they can go," Xiaohua said with a shrug. Then, "Little junior brother, are you going or not?" Xiangyang asked. "Not going." "Going," Xiaohua and Helplessly answered at the same time. Damn it, when other people accept a disciple, they are all respectful and reverent to their master. How can my disciple be so disobedient? Do you think that I won't dare to teach you a lesson because you have the sect master's token?" Helplessly angrily waved his hand. The spiritual energy in the cave suddenly changed. "Husband." Zhua Minghui's expression was also normal. She also waved her hand and blocked Helplessly's magic. She said in a deep voice, "Talk to the child properly. You're always so reckless. You're not satisfied with Xiangyang being honest and obedient. You're not satisfied with Xiaohua having his own ideas. What kind of disciple do you want to accept?" Seeing Helplessly angry, Xiaohua was also afraid. Seeing his master's wife speaking up for him, his heart felt warm. Helplessly's expression changed. He looked at Zhuo Minghui and sat down again. He said somewhat dejectedly, Forget it. If you don't want to go, then so be it. My 10,000 Thunder Valley hasn't participated in the Feather Immortal Assembly for many years. Back then, forget it, let's not talk about it." I'll talk about it for you," Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. "Back then, didn't you take it to heart because you got the 21st place and didn't have the qualifications to participate?" Helplessly embarrassedly said, "I thought that you could let your master rest in peace in the underworld. You just threw away your responsibility like this." "Master," Xiaohua felt wronged and said, "How could I know so much? Junior brother, I also participated in this selection back then. Unfortunately, I only got the 40th place. The difference is too great." Xiangyang also said with a smile, "You're lucky to get this opportunity. You can't give it up." "Senior brother, you've been talking for a long time. Isn't it just going out to gain experience? I've been wandering outside for a long time. I really don't want to tire myself out," Xiaohua said with a bitter smile. Husband, this is also your fault. You didn't tell Xiaohua the origin of this Feather Immortal Assembly. Xiaohua will naturally have other ideas," Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Helplessly spreading his hands, he said, "How can you blame me? I thought that he signed up for the Feather Immortal Assembly himself. Do you still need me to say it? Xiangyang, tell your junior brother about the Feather Immortal Assembly." "Yes, I understand." Following his master's order, Xiangyang told Xiaohua about the Feather Immortal Assembly. As it turned out, there were two countries around the country of Xi that were similar to the country of Xi. They were the country of Lian and the country of Ming. There were several cultivation sects in each of the three countries. In order to promote the communication between the cultivation sects of the three countries and provide opportunities for the disciples of the 12th Qi refining stage to gain experience, the three countries agreed to hold a Feather Immortal Assembly once every 10 years. The so-called Feather Immortal Assembly meant that the cultivators of the 12th Qi refining stage would become real cultivators. Because it was a matter between the three countries, it also affected the reputation of each sect. Every time, the disciples who participated in the Feather Immortal Assembly would be selected in advance. They would strive to defeat their opponents in the competition. Yes, it would be best if they could build their foundation during the Feather Immortal Assembly. On one hand, it would show the strength of the sect. On the other hand, it would show the importance of the Feather Immortal Assembly. Of course, because each sect valued the Feather Immortal Assembly, the disciples of each sect would be honored to be able to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. If they could win a certain reputation during the Feather Immortal Assembly, they would naturally be rewarded handsomely when they returned to their sects. When he heard that there would be handsomely rewarded, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. However, when he thought about it, he realized that the disciples who were going to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly were all in the late qi refining stage. Which one of them didn't have a profound cultivation? He lost interest again. Eldest senior brother, I'm a rogue cultivator. There are many things that I don't know. Now, I have a question that I want to ask. I don't know if it's a blessing. Xiao Hua said after thinking for a while. Haha, there's no harm in asking. If I can't answer, there's still master. Xiang Yang said with a smile. Oh, it's like this. I used to think that the country of Xi was the Dawn Rain continent, and the Dawn Rain continent was the country of Xi. Now, I heard from you that there are also the country of Ming and the country of Lian. Then are there other countries? This Dawn Rain continent, what is it like? Xiao Hua used to only think about escaping and cultivation. He never thought about these things in detail. Even when he heard that Li Zongbao came from the Utopia faction of the country of Lian, he didn't think much of it. Now that he really had a backer, he had the intention to investigate the specific situation of the Dawn Rain continent. Actually, youngest junior brother, your cultivation is too low now. It's not necessarily beneficial to know too much. When I was in the family when I was young, the patriarch never told me much. I only slowly learned about it after I came to the Imperial Thunder sect. Xiao Hua looked at him helplessly and said with a smile, Master, do you think I should know? He lowered his head helplessly and thought for a moment. Then he looked up at Zhuo Minghui. Zhuo Minghui also frowned slightly and said in a low voice, Xiao Hua used to be a rogue cultivator. He has experienced a lot of difficulties. He should be able to accept it. Moreover, it's inevitable that he will go out and travel in the future. It's good for him to know something earlier, right? Don't let him be at a loss when he encounters some unexpected things. He'll suffer a great loss. Alas, okay. He waved his hand helplessly and said tirelessly. The more Xiao Hua listened, the more he frowned. The more he listened, the more fascinated he became. He really didn't expect that he was a frog at the bottom of a well. He only saw the country of Xi. He didn't expect that outside of the country of Xi, on the vast and boundless Dawn Rain continent, there was such a colorful world of cultivation. -7. Chapter 1586. It turned out that the country of Xi wasn't the only country on the Xiaoyu continent. The neighboring countries that had good relations with the country of Xi were the country of Lian and the country of Ming. The territories of these three countries were intertwined with each other, and they had a lot of interactions with each other. To the west of the country of Xi was the country of Heng. Heng's territory was semicircular and bordered the country of Xi, the country of Ming, and the country of Lian. Among them, the country of Xi, the country of Lian, and the country of Ming focused on the cultivation of Dao. Magic tools and treasures were only used as support and were only used in battle. The country of Heng focused on the cultivation of tools. That is, they relied on external objects such as flying swords, magic tools, or spirit beasts while cultivating. Because people who walked different paths couldn't work together, although the country of Xi and the other two countries all cultivated Dao, they didn't interact much and even had conflicts most of the time. The reason why the country of Heng focused on tools was because the country of Heng's west and south borders were the millions of Ming mountains. The millions of Ming mountains were different from the four cultivation countries. In the four cultivation countries, aside from secular people, there were only cultivators. However, in the millions of Ming mountains, there were no cultivators. Aside from the barbaric mountain people, there were only soul cultivators, also known as soul cultivators. As the name suggests, these soul cultivators cultivated the soul, which was completely different from cultivators. The millions of Ming mountains were extremely vast, and there were countless dangerous mountains and rivers. The living environment was extremely harsh, and the original mountain people were in a semi-civilized state, so soul cultivators had a hard time developing. Therefore, soul cultivators often harassed the country of Hong, wanting to expand to the eastern cultivation countries. It was because of this that the cultivators of the country of Hong had to cultivate fighting techniques. Every cultivator of the country of Hong was a warrior to resist the attacks of soul cultivators. Of course, aside from the 4 cultivation nations and the millions of soul cultivators in Ming Mountains, there was a vast desert to the north of the Xiaoyu continent. North of the desert was the land of the far north. To the east of the Ming Kingdom and the Lian Kingdom was the Sea of Heaven and Earth. It was vast and boundless and filled with countless dangers. Not even cultivators dared to venture there, let alone mortals. To the east of the millions of Ming Mountains was a huge cultivation alliance called the Li Alliance. The cultivation level of the Li Alliance was higher than the 4 cultivation countries. Not only did the cultivation sects have a lot of high-level cultivators, but the strength of the cultivation sects. Of course, there were many rogue cultivators in the Defeat Oak Alliance. The status of rogue cultivators was also higher than the status of rogue cultivators in the 4 cultivation countries. Moreover, it was said that the Defeat Valley Alliance had all kinds of cultivation techniques, unlike the country of Shi, which was so poor. Why was it said? That was because there were millions of Ming mountains between the Defeat League and the 4 nations of cultivators. This region was too dangerous, and without powerful cultivators, it was not easy to pass through it. Cultivators from the 4 nations of cultivators would not take the risk to go to the Defeat League because there was a high possibility of losing their lives there. And those who had the ability to pass through the Defeat League had no reason to come to a backward place like the country of Shi. As for the teleportation formation, because the distance was too far, ordinary teleportation formations couldn't reach it. The 4 cultivation countries didn't have the power to set up such a formation, and the Failure Alliance wouldn't spend the effort to do such a thing. Helplessly and slowly, Xiaohua listened with fascination. Unexpectedly, there was a place where rogue cultivators could sit on equal footing with cultivator sections. Unexpectedly, there was a place where cultivators didn't have to worry about cultivation methods. Unexpectedly, there were soul cultivators, weapon cultivators, sword cultivators, and so on. It was truly miraculous. That's right, Master. What is a charm? Is it the same as that soul cultivator? After helplessly finished his simple explanation, the cave was silent. Xiaohua thought for a moment and asked, "Charm?" Helplessly slightly frowned and shook his head. It is said that this is a cultivation method left behind from ancient times. Master also doesn't understand it, but soul cultivators are just a general term for cultivating the soul. A human being has 3 souls and 6 spirits. It is said that there are 3 souls. 1 is the heaven soul, 2 is the earth soul, and 3 is the life soul. There are 7 spirits. 1 is the heaven rush, 2 is the spirit wisdom, 3 is the chi, 4 is the strength, 5 is the core, 6 is the essence, and 7 is the hero. Every soul and every spirit can be cultivated. But as for how to cultivate, Master doesn't know. In addition, soul cultivators also include spirit cultivators, corpse cultivators, ghost cultivators, ink cultivators, and so on. However, these are all rumors. Master also heard them from hearsay. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly thought of something and asked, "Then, which cultivation sect is the Buddhist sect?" "Buddhist sect? Which cultivation sect?" Helplessly stared blankly. The expression on his face tightened, and he said in a low voice, "Xiaohua, how do you know about this Buddhist sect?" Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart thumped, and he hurriedly smiled apologetically. Disciple only heard people casually mention it before. Disciple also doesn't know where it is. Hee, husband, don't be nervous. Didn't you hear Xiaohua ask which cultivation sect is the Buddhist sect? How would he know those things? And that's true. Helplessly nodding, he thought for a moment and said, "Xiaohua, remember, the Buddhist sect isn't a cultivation sect. As for what it is, don't ask too much. Just pretend that you've never heard of this name." "Yes, disciple understands." Xiao Hua hurriedly nodded like a chick pecking at rice. How could he dare to say that he cultivated the Buddhist Saraira? In order to change the topic, Xiao Hua asked again. Disciple still has a question. Helplessly looking at him, Xiao Hua rolled his eyes. You have a lot more questions than your eldest senior brother. Hee, disciple's knowledge is shallow. Of course I have to ask. Xiao Hua smiled. My Imperial Thunder sect also has a method to refine magic tools. We also use magic tools. Why is it different from Huan country's magic tool cultivators? That's very simple. Helplessly smiling, Xiao Hua said, You've seen flying sword talismans, right? Xiao Hua nodded. Disciple has. Speaking, he waved his hand and took out a flying sword talisman. And then have you also seen flying swords? Helplessly continuing to ask. Disciple had the fortune to see it once. Xiao Hua thought of Li Zongbao's flying sword. And then what do you think is the difference between flying sword talismans and flying swords? Helplessly shaking his head, Xiao Hua smiled. Although Disciple doesn't understand flying swords, flying sword talismans and flying swords are still very far apart. How can Disciple not know? That flying sword talisman is just a yellow talisman. How can it compare to flying swords? And, since you know the difference, then sword cultivators' flying swords compared to our flying swords is just this difference. Helplessly smiling. The difference is that big? Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. Sword cultivators' flying swords are planted in their dantian from the qi refinement stage. They use their own blood essence to carefully cultivate it and connect their primordial spirit with the flying sword. That flying sword is like a baby. It will also slowly grow along with the sword cultivator's cultivation. Our flying swords can only be used for attack. Perhaps it can be used for simple flight. In addition, there can also be flying magic tools and attacking magic tools. But a sword cultivator's flying sword is everything. Using the body as a sword to fly, imperial sword technique and so on. It can't be. This flying sword can still grow? Xiao Hua almost didn't believe it. Magic tools are flying swords? Magic treasures are flying swords? Ha, junior brother, there are many strange things in the cultivation world. Flying swords are still relatively orthodox. In our 3 cultivation countries, there are also sects that specialize in using flying swords. It is said that there are also natal magic treasures that are circular and duplicated. I also heard that there are some beast cultivators from the Million Ming Mountains who use spirit beasts as their natal magic treasures to increase their cultivation. Don't you think it's strange? Beast cultivators? Xiao Hua was stunned. He couldn't help but think of his dragonization art. The cultivation of this dragonization art. I wonder if it's a beast cultivator? Husband, you're absolutely right. Yin Qinglian hadn't said anything all this time. At this time, she echoed. There are also powerful people in our 3 cultivation countries. Although they disdain to cultivate beast cultivators, they also use the principles within as a reference. They introduced beast blood and beast skin into talisman crafting techniques, thus creating the so-called beast spirit talismans. Giant spirit beast talismans, sky-shaking flying talismans, and so on are all used to change the cultivator's bloodline and borrow the power of spirit beasts. Xiao Hua secretly nodded. Thinking of Qin Mingwei's transformation, he said inwardly, So that's how it is. All right, Xiao Hua, Master and your eldest senior brother have already explained the matter of the Feather Immortal Assembly to you clearly. Being able to participate in this Feather Immortal Assembly is a kind of honor. Not only can you cultivate, but you can also increase your experience. You can also make friends with other cultivators in the 3 cultivation countries, which is greatly beneficial for your future cultivation. Just now, before you came, I already asked the manager of the Thunder Palace. Apart from you, only that bastard Zhun Yu's disciple called Wang Yunxiao has obtained the qualifications to participate. If you don't go. At this point, Xiao Hua shut his mouth and didn't say anything else. At this time, Xiao Hua finally understood why Xiao Hua was so angry that he didn't participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. It was because of Zhun Yu. That late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator who didn't get along with Xiao Hua, that guy who snatched Wang Yunxiao away. At this time, Zhuo Minghui also said, Perhaps Xiaohua still doesn't know that because every disciple who participates in the Feather Immortal Assembly represents the Thunder Palace, every disciple has the opportunity to go to their respective Thunder Palace's treasure house to choose a magic tool of some use when they obtain the qualifications to participate. Ah? When Xiaohua heard this, his eyes lit up. Forget it. Since Xiaohua has already decided not to go, then there's no need to go. Xiaohua shook his head and said, My Thunder Palace doesn't have any good magic tools, but they were all left behind by seniors. It's better to just leave them there. Magic tools aren't much. The key is cultivation. If Xiaohua's cultivation quickly increased to foundation establishment, how many magic tools can he use? We can't lose the long term because of short-term benefits. Husband, you're right. We can't delay Xiaohua's cultivation for the sake of the 10,000 Thunder Valley's reputation. Zhuo Minghui nodded with a smile. We can't. Master, that's the Thunder Palace's magic tool. In the past, I've always wanted to obtain it. Today, junior brother finally has a chance. Xiangyang was anxious and said hurriedly. Beside him, Yin Qinglian pursed her lips and kept shooting glances at Xiangyang. If it weren't for the fact that Xiaohua was here, she would have already transmitted her voice to Xiangyang. Seeing that the cute senior brother had brought the ladder over, how could Xiaohua let it go? He immediately stood up and said in a loud voice, Thank you for your guidance, senior brother. Since it's for the sake of the 10,000 Thunder Valley's reputation, junior brother will definitely fight for master, senior brother, and martial ancestor even if my cultivation is delayed. -7. Chapter 1587. Please don't make things difficult for me. He asked helplessly. I'm not making things difficult. I'm not making things difficult. Xiaohua patted his chest. I'm not making things difficult. He asked helplessly again. I'm not making things difficult. I'm not making things difficult. Xiaohua's face was full of smiles. He seemed to be very happy. He snorted helplessly and said, Even if you go, won't you just run away? Won't you still embarrass my 10,000 Thunder Valley? Xiaohua said with a smile, Master, isn't the purpose of the Feather Immortal Assembly held by the 3 cultivation countries? It's enough for me to participate in this assembly. Is there a need to fuss about the ranking? That thing can't be eaten or drunk. Since junior brother passed the qualification test, he must have some confidence. He's only in the early stage of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. It's normal for him to lose to anyone. Xiangyang said, Do you think I don't know? He glared helplessly at Xiangyang. This kid used to be a loose cultivator. What kind of sinister methods hasn't he seen? To be able to take the 20th place among more than 200 late-stage aura refining disciples, he naturally has some tricks up his sleeve. Xiangyang, you and Xiaohua practice a few moves. Weigh his weight. There's no need. Master, junior brother, just reached the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Xiangyang was in a difficult position. After all, aura refining cultivators were fundamentally different from foundation building cultivators. What are you afraid of? Can you still injure Xiaohua? He said coldly and helplessly. Xiaohua was also unhappy. He smiled apologetically and said, Master, there's no need for a spar. My cultivation is shallow, and I haven't refined the magic tool Master's wife gave me. I really can't compete with senior brother. He glared helplessly at him and said, I told you to spar, so just spar. Where's all this nonsense coming from? Xiangyang and Xiaohua were helpless. They could only walk out of the cave. The 5 of them all flew into the air. They had no choice but to stand 1,000 feet away and watch from afar. Xiangyang glanced at Xiaohua and said with a smile, Junior brother, if you have any tricks up your sleeve, use them all. Your cultivation can't injure me. Moreover, only if you use all your skills will Master be able to teach you more. This is a rare opportunity. Xiaohua originally wanted to hold back, but after hearing Xiangyang's words, he understood in his heart that although Xiangyang was only an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, he had been in the foundation establishment realm for a long time. His magic power was not something he could compare with. If they really fought, he wouldn't even be able to protect himself, so how could he hold back? That would be a laughingstock. Okay, little brother understands. Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, Xiangyang smiled and cupped his hands. Junior martial brother, please. Elder first. Eldest senior brother, please. Xiaohua said with a smile. Or. Xiangyang was about to decline. Suddenly, he saw that Xiaohua's posture of cupping his hands didn't change, but his entire body suddenly crashed into him. What are you doing? Xiangyang was slightly stunned. In the instant he was stunned, Xiaohua flung his hand, and 6 fireball talismans were scattered on top of Xiangyang's head. The 6 fireball talismans were scattered under Xiangyang's feet. The position of these 6 fireball talismans was roughly the same as the position of the array disk of the heavenly fire array. Moreover, these 12 fireball talismans were extremely fast under the control of the Buddhist consciousness. Xiangyang was stunned and clapped his hands. Just as he held a small hammer in his hand, the 12 fireball talismans exploded on his upper and lower body at the same time. Rumble. The 2 waves of air pressed towards Xiangyang in tacit understanding. Ouch! Xiangyang felt a huge magic power fluctuation, and the defensive spell around his body flashed brilliantly, as if it was about to be annihilated. Xiangyang didn't have time to activate the magic tool in his hand. He formed a seal in his hand, urged his magic power, and cast the seal on his body. Just as Xiangyang urged his magic power, Xiaohua raised his hand again, and the same 12 fireball talismans were scattered in the same position. Xiangyang's defensive spell was cast, and his 12 fireball talismans were also cast and exploded. The same rumble, the same heat wave, and the same magic power fluctuation rushed towards Xiangyang. Xiangyang was helpless and urged his magic power to protect himself. But just as he finished casting the spell, Xiaohua's 12 fireball talismans were also cast. Xiangyang almost wanted to laugh bitterly. Is there anyone who fights like this? This happened several times. Xiangyang wanted to use up all of Xiaohua's fireball talismans, but his heart was distressed for these fireball talismans. After thinking for a moment, he no longer used all of his magic power on the spell. He urged his flying technique while maintaining his defense. However, the fireball talisman's airwaves were different from what he imagined. It almost blocked all the directions he could fly in. He could only use his magic power to forcibly break through the airwaves. Forget it. Xiangyang's heart was somewhat sour. He no longer urged his magic power to defend his body. He wanted to risk a slight injury to escape from the siege of the fireball talismans. Xiangyang was very clear that as long as he urged the magic tool in his hand, he would definitely be able to reverse the situation. Sure enough, as Xiangyang was about to rush out of the siege of the fireball talismans, the defensive brilliance of his body was torn apart by the explosion of the fireball. At the same time, an already weak magic power fluctuation rushed to Xiangyang's chest. Xiangyang didn't pay attention to this fluctuation. He urged his magic power to urge the hammer, and a circle of blue lightning appeared from the middle of the hammer. It followed the hammer down and quickly reached the tip. Hee, junior brother. Eat my hammer. Xiangyang laughed and casually smashed outwards. His divine sense had been locked onto Xiaohua. He firmly believed that even if Xiaohua knew the hibernating thunder escape, this lightning would definitely hit Xiaohua's side. However, at the same time he waved his magic tool. A portion of the magic power fluctuation that attacked his chest still rushed over, while a portion seemed to slightly stagnate. It was this stagnant magic power fluctuation that made him raise his guard. He left a trace of divine sense to sweep over, and Xiangyang immediately turned pale with fright. A jet-black iron needle had stopped right in front of his chest. At this time, how could Xiangyang still care about using his magic tool to attack Xiaohua? He hurriedly changed the direction of his magic tool and attacked the black iron needle before the magic tool was released. Zalala, the lightning met the black iron needle with extreme speed. That black iron needle suddenly jumped, and like a jumping black fish, it nimbly flew into the distant sky. Haha, eldest senior brother, look at my trump card. Taking advantage of Xiangyang's busy dealing with the fireball talismans, Xiaohua had already flown away from Xiangyang. He clapped his hand, and that black dust was held in his hand. He waved his hand, and an earthen yellow brilliance was released from the black dust. It was like a concrete earth pillar, and like a huge boulder, it smashed towards Xiangyang. Seeing this, Xiangyang smiled and said, "Come at me." Then his body flew up, and the magic tool in his hand continuously waved. Every time he waved it, a bolt of lightning would flash out and attack the brilliance above his head. Zalala, the countless lightning bolts hit the black dust brilliance, and it was like pouring boiling water on top of snow. The countless particles within that earthen yellow brilliance were melted by the lightning. The lightning bolts followed the earthen yellow light pillar and quickly chased after Xiao Hua. Damn it, the difference is really too great. When Xiao Hua saw the situation, he knew that he couldn't compete with his eldest senior brother in terms of magic tools. He clapped his hand, and the black dust brilliance was immediately withdrawn. His hand shook, and that black dust brilliance was absorbed into the space. After losing the black dust brilliance, the lightning bolts didn't disappear and still attacked Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua naturally didn't dare to stay in the air. His body flew up, and he escaped far away. Hee. Xiangyang finally turned the situation around. He smiled, and just as he was about to wave his magic tool again, in his divine sense, the black iron needle that had just flown away flew back again. This time, Xiangyang wasn't afraid. He separated a trace of his divine sense and wrapped it around the black iron needle, as if he wanted to forcefully snatch the black iron needle. Ouch! Xiao Hua was shocked. He didn't think that Xiangyang would have this kind of skill. He quickly controlled the black iron needle to quickly retreat. This black iron needle was sacrificed by Xiao Hua using a secret technique. Although Xiangyang's divine sense was powerful, he still couldn't control the black iron needle very well. Xiao Hua nimbly dodged it, and it flew far away again. Seeing the black iron needle fly away, Xiangyang didn't chase after it. He waved the magic tool in his hand again, and a bolt of lightning appeared, attacking Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua knew that the defensive yellow talisman on his body was useless, so he naturally couldn't let the lightning strike him. He could only escape far away before the lightning struck. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's flying technique was very fast, and he always escaped before Xiangyang's lightning struck him. Looking at Xiangyang again, although he took the initiative, his speed was still much slower than Xiao Hua's. He couldn't catch up, and his magic tool couldn't hit Xiao Hua. The two of them were in a deadlock like this for a while. Soon after, Xiangyang reduced the number and strength of activating his magic tool. His other hand began to form an extremely complicated seal. As the seal in Xiangyang's hand gradually formed, traces of heaven and earth spiritual energy condensed in his hand. When the seal was formed, Xiangyang used his divine sense to lock onto Xiao Hua. He waved the seal, and under the control of his divine sense, it directly hit Xiao Hua's body. Although Xiao Hua's flying speed was very fast, in the end, it couldn't be faster than divine sense. Under the control of divine sense, the seal actually managed to catch up to Xiao Hua. How could Xiao Hua want to dodge this seal? He could only use the hibernating thunder escape to escape far away. But contrary to Xiangyang's expectations, the moment the seal hit Xiao Hua's figure actually flashed. There was no trace of magic power fluctuation at all, and then, as fast as lightning, he pounced on Xiangyang's chest. Not good. Xiao Hua wants to use fireball talismans again. This was Xiangyang's first thought. He naturally wasn't willing to let Xiao Hua get close to him. Thus, on one hand, he controlled the seal, on the other, he urged his magic tool, and on the other, he used his flying technique, wanting to increase the distance between him and Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's figure was nimble. Every time it was impossible to dodge the lightning and seal, he had already closed in on Xiangyang in an instant. Sure enough, seeing that the distance was right, Xiao Hua shook his hand, and another 12 fireball talismans appeared. However, at this time, Xiangyang had a magic tool in his hand. Before the fireball talismans could explode, they were destroyed by his magic tool. There were simply not many that exploded. However, just as Xiangyang was distracted, Xiao Hua's flying speed suddenly increased again. Xiangyang only saw a flash in front of him, and Xiao Hua had already flown in front of him. He saw Xiao Hua raise his hand, as if he wanted to take something out, but after hesitating for a moment, he was still empty-handed in the end. And at this time, Xiang Yang waved his hand in a flurry, and a great confinement technique that didn't use much magic power was cast by him. It precisely hit Xiaohua's body. -7. Chapter 1588. The great confinement technique quickly hit Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua leaned to the side, seemingly unable to dodge in time. His entire body immediately stiffened and fell from the sky like a large rock. In the distance, Wu Hai, Zhuo Minghui, and Yin Qinglian were all dumbstruck. First, Xiaohua used the fireball talisman tactic to firmly suppress Xiang Yang, giving him no chance to dodge. Then, Xiaohua's black iron needle appeared. Of course, although Xiaohua's black iron needle was very strange, it couldn't escape Wu Hai's and Yin Qinglian's divine sense. Only Xiang Yang couldn't see it clearly under the suppression of the fireball talisman. Seeing Xiaohua's favorable start, Wu Hai and the others already understood. Even an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator like Xiang Yang could be trapped by Xiaohua. How could a 12th-stage qi refining cultivator be so lucky? Of course, this was on the premise that Xiaohua had enough fireball talismans. Seeing this, Wu Hai and the others were already very surprised, but they didn't expect what happened next would be even more unexpected. Xiang Yang, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, actually couldn't catch up to Xiaohua, an early-stage qi refining cultivator. There was a difference of several stages between the two of them. In the end, Xiaohua gave up the chance to escape and turned around to attack Xiang Yang. They originally thought that Xiaohua had an even more unexpected trump card, but in the end, he was actually defeated by Xiang Yang's very ordinary great confinement technique. This was indeed unexpected. Xiang Yang was naturally also stunned, but he immediately used a flying technique to descend and cast a spell on Xiaohua's body to remove the great confinement technique. Ha ha ha, eldest senior brother. You're really powerful. I used all my methods and still couldn't defeat you. Xiaohua jumped in the air and laughed. Xiang Yang was also very carefree. He waved his arms and was about to speak when Wu Hai scolded from above. What a joke. What cultivation level do you have? You actually dare to say you can defeat your eldest senior brother? If you really defeated him, how is that possible? Zhuo Minghui also laughed. I've only heard of middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators defeating late-stage foundation establishment cultivators with magic tools, but I've never heard of late-stage qi refining cultivators defeating early-stage foundation establishment cultivators. The difference between the two stages is really too great. Little junior brother is already very good. Yin Qinglian smiled and said, if it was really a fight, little junior brother would have run away long ago. Even if Xiang Yang wanted to chase after him, he wouldn't be able to. Helplessly, he nodded slightly. He could see that Xiaohua's flight technique was truly a lot stronger than Xiang Yang's. Back then, when he heard that Xiaohua had escaped from the hands of 4 foundation establishment cultivators, he was admittedly astonished, but he felt that it was somewhat exaggerated, so he hadn't mentioned it in the past few years. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he had no choice but to believe it. In this world, there really were some unparalleled people. They really made ordinary people feel ashamed of their inferiority. Master, this disciple, only has this little bit of cultivation. I've let you see a joke. Xiaohua's face looked indifferent, and he said very calmly, let's head down first. Waving his hands helplessly, the crowd returned to their abodes. He helplessly looked at Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, you have indeed exceeded my expectations. Just like what your senior sister-in-law said, you did very well. It's just that your weakness is also very obvious. That is, your foundation is too weak. Because you haven't gone through a very systematic cultivation of spells like your eldest senior brother, you can't use some basic spells smoothly. For example, just now, even if you didn't have time to take out a yellow talisman, you could have used something like the ice seal technique to block the great confinement technique for a moment. Why didn't you take advantage of that time to run away? Yes, this disciple understands. This disciple's basic spells were all snatched from others and comprehended by myself. How could they be better than eldest senior brothers? Xiaohua said sincerely. During this period of time, let your eldest senior brother teach you all of the basic magic spells that you know. The simpler it is, the more practical it is. Just look at your eldest senior brother's great confinement technique and you'll know. Helplessly looked at Xiang Yang. Yes, this disciple understands. This disciple will carefully guide little junior brother. Xiang Yang hurriedly said. Also, where did you get that earth attribute magic tool? It doesn't seem to be very handy. Helplessly said with a deep meaning. Hee, where else could I have gotten it from? I snatched it from a spirit husbandry sect disciple. Xiao Hua didn't hide anything and gave a rough explanation. Poor child. Hearing that Xiao Hua had gone through so much hardship just to obtain some third-level qi refining techniques, Zhuo Minghui's eyes immediately turned red. She said, I've always thought that rogue cultivators are despicable, harming people's lives and snatching their techniques. But now that I hear it, they had no choice. Yes, Master knows. Although this disciple was a rogue cultivator back then, I had always relied on my own efforts to obtain techniques. I would never dare to harm people's lives in the name of cultivation. These two spirit husbandry sect disciples were indeed despicable, wanting to take this disciple's life. That's why this disciple, Master knows, Master knows. Zhuo Minghui hurriedly said, 2 5th and 6th level qi, refining cultivators, bullying a 2nd level qi, refining cultivator like you. Even if it means taking their lives, it's only right. Humph. Give the magic tool to Master. Helplessly said as he spread out his hands. What? Master, don't tell me you're on good terms with the spirit husbandry sect? Helplessly was shocked and very unwilling to hand it over. Hee, since when would your master be so biased? Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, Your magic tool hasn't been reforged. The spirit husbandry sect disciples would know that it belongs to them. Wouldn't they cause trouble for you? Your master wants to take it to the Thunder Flashing Hall and ask the weapon refiners to reforge it for you. Was that true? That's great. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out the white dust. He handed it over and then asked embarrassedly, Master, this disciple still has one more. Can I also? Helplessly said in annoyance, How many more do you have? Give them all to me? In Xiao Hua's dimension, there were still a few magic tools used by Zhenxie. It was a pity that he didn't dare to take them out. Xiao Hua took them out with a smile and said, This disciple only has these 2 treasures. How could there be more? Helplessly took them and put them into her storage bag. She then said, You definitely haven't refined the magic tool that your master's wife gave you. With it, you have the means to attack. However, looking at your fight just now, your defense is still too weak. If you want to choose a magic tool, you have to choose one that can defend. Husband, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Zhuo Minghui said, Xiao Hua's flying speed is extremely fast. This is his best defense. If he can't hit him, he can escape. Therefore, I think Xiao Hua should make a fuss in this attack. The stronger the magic tool, the better. When Xiao Hua heard this, it was exactly what he wanted. He nodded and said, Master's wife is right. Then, with a wave of his hand, he took out the magic spear and said with a smile, This disciple had a very interesting thing before. Just now, I saw that eldest senior brother's defense was very strong, so I didn't take it out. Magic tool? Helplessly scanned with her divine sense and said with a smile, You have a lot of good things on you. As she said this, she reached out to take it. Xiao Hua hurriedly said, Master, you should be careful. This thing is very heavy. You think I don't know? Helplessly, she glared at him and used a bit of magic power on her arm. As a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, she naturally didn't care too much about the weight of this magic spear. However, after taking it, she was also surprised. You want to use this magic spear to break your senior brother's defense? Helplessly, she whispered, Yes, this disciple indeed has this idea. Xiao Hua didn't hide it. When this disciple was a loose cultivator, I used this method to escape many times. Xiangyang, don't move. Let Xiao Hua try. Helplessly, she waved her hand and said, You old man, Xiao Hua didn't use it just now. He knows this move won't work. Even if you want to teach him a lesson, you don't need to test it on Xiangyang, right? Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. However, Xiangyang was honest. He hurriedly stood up and said with a smile, It's fine. This disciple will stand here and not move. Xiaohua took the magic spear and walked in front of Xiangyang with a smile, saying, "Eldest senior brother, don't move. This little brother will offend you." Xiangyang waved his hand. "Don't worry. This brother is a foundation establishment cultivator. I have magical powers that you can't imagine. Okay, be careful, eldest senior brother." Xiaohua also wasn't polite. He waved his hand, and the devil's spear in his hand pierced towards Xiangyang's waist. Shua, a light sound was heard. A faint brilliance flashed and blocked Xiaohua's spear. However, Xiangyang couldn't block Xiaohua's incomparably huge force. His figure slightly staggered. Immediately after, a scene that helplessness, Xiangyang, and the others didn't expect happened. They saw Xiaohua's right hand suddenly thrusting the magic spear continuously. That right hand seemed to be an illusion in everyone's eyes. Waves of huge force that Xiangyang couldn't resist hit Xiangyang's waist. Xiangyang's body was almost sent flying. However, even so, Xiaohua's spear still didn't leave Xiangyang's waist. Caught up in just a few breaths of time, everyone heard a light sound. They saw Xiangyang's body flicker with brilliance, and then it was annihilated. Xiangyang, this foundation establishment, early-stage cultivator's defensive brilliance was actually destroyed by Xiaohua. Yin Qinglian was greatly alarmed. She almost stood up. Helplessness waved his hand, wanting to stop Xiaohua. As for Xiaohua himself, when the first spear pierced Xiangyang, he already had a plan in his heart. Seeing the defensive brilliance break, he immediately stopped. He held Xiangyang's hand and said, "Eldest senior brother, Master didn't let you move, but he didn't say you couldn't replenish your magic power. If you keep getting beaten like this, it will break sooner or later." Xiangyang's hand formed a seal, and the brilliance on his body flashed again. He said with a bitter smile, "Master just wanted to see how powerful your magic spear is. If I replenish my magic power, how can he see it? Besides, your magic spear is really powerful. If I didn't see it in advance, even if I replenished my magic power, I'm afraid it would be too late." "What a pity," Helplessness said from the side. "Xiaohua's magic spear is a good thing, but its weight is still limited. It can't break a foundation establishment cultivator's defense in the shortest time possible. If it was several times heavier, I'm afraid Xiangyang wouldn't be able to withstand it." "Master, look at what you're saying. If it were any heavier, disciple wouldn't be able to lift it," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Hee, not bad, not bad. Your body strength actually has a use. Let Master think for you." Helplessly laughing, Xiaohua said, "But right now, it's no problem to deal with ordinary qi refining cultivators." Xiaohua was overjoyed. He bowed and said, "Many thanks, Master." -7. Chapter 1589. Then, he stood up and said, "Let's go. Follow me to the Thunder Flash Hall. You can choose a magic tool, and I'll find a familiar blacksmith." Xiaohua didn't expect Helpless to be so anxious, so he was naturally happy. He bid farewell to Zhuo Minghui and the others, then followed Helpless to the Thunder Flash Hall. Along the way, Helpless seemed to be testing Xiaohua's flying technique. He was extremely fast and didn't hold back at all. Xiaohua didn't use the hibernating thunder escape, but he wasn't slow either. Although he couldn't catch up to Helpless, he still couldn't stop smiling. When they arrived at the Thunder Flash Hall, Helpless called the disciple in charge of odd jobs over and explained the situation. The disciple checked the records and said with a smile, "So it's the disciple representing the Thunderquake Palace in the Feather Immortal Assembly. I'm really envious. Junior Marshal Brother, please wait a moment. I'll inform the deacon to come over. The place where the magic tools are kept is very important. Without the deacon's personal guidance, no one can open the restriction." With that, the disciple sent out a summoning talisman. After a short while, the burly deacon came over. The deacon obviously knew Helpless, and after cupping his hands in greeting, he repeatedly congratulated him. However, in all these years, he had never received so many compliments. His mouth, which could not close, opened even wider. He said, "This poor Taoist is a good-for-nothing disciple." His face was full of pride. How was he a good-for-nothing disciple? He was a good-for-nothing disciple. However, it was no wonder that Helpless was so proud. Even Zhenxing and the disciple on duty were surprised. Thunderquake Palace had held the Feather Immortal Assembly countless times in the past. All the disciples who participated in the Feather Immortal Assembly were experts at the peak of the 12th layer. When had there ever been a disciple like Xiao Hua who had just entered the 12th layer? Of course, there were occasionally disciples in the middle of the 12th layer who were qualified to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly, but those disciples were all direct disciples of the Thunderquake sect. Their masters and grandmasters weren't people that Helpless could compare to. I's good-for-nothing disciple will be handed over to you, Senior Martial Brother Zhen. If he doesn't listen to you, you can teach him a lesson. Just treat it as me taking action on behalf of I. Helpless held Xiao Hua's hand and said to Zhenxing, I have some matters to attend to elsewhere. I'll come back later. I hope Senior Martial Brother can take care of me. Zhenming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He cupped his hands and said, Junior Brother, you can go ahead and do your own thing. The matter of choosing artifacts is the disciple's business. Even if I want to take care of them, I don't know how to do it. Xiao Hua is still young. He simply doesn't know what kind of magic tool is suitable for him. If Senior Brother has the chance, I still have to remind him. When Zhenming heard this, he knew that if he didn't say anything, he wouldn't leave. He could only smile and say, I understand, Junior Martial Brother. You can go now. Of course, these words were perfunctory, but they were also clear in their hearts. But when they heard it, their hearts were finally at ease. They cupped their hands and gave Xiao Hua a few more instructions before leaving. After he helplessly left, Zhenming looked at Xiao Hua. The trace of gentleness on his face gradually disappeared. He waved his hand and said, Follow me. As he spoke, he walked into the inner hall without looking back. The disciple on duty just now stood there and did not follow him. Xiao Hua was no stranger to Shuale Hall. He had been here several times, but he didn't go deep inside. He always stayed in the main hall. This time, as Zhenming slowly walked inside, he realized that Shuale Hall was really wide. After walking for the time it takes to burn an incense stick, he didn't know how many disciples bowed to him. He also didn't know how many corridors he passed before he finally stopped at the entrance of a side hall. Zhenming walked to the entrance of I. The door was tightly shut. It was the same as usual. There were no fluctuations of magic power. Xiao Hua knew that this was the place where the artifacts were stored, so he tactfully stopped. Zhenming patted his storage bag and took out his identity token. His other hand formed a seal and hit the door of the side hall. Woo! With a loud roar, the palace door flashed and gradually changed shape. It actually let out the roar of a wild beast. When the roar stopped, the palace door also finished changing shape. It was a monster with a bloody mouth and closed eyes. What kind of restriction is this? Looking at the lifelike beast head in front of him, Xiao Hua felt a bit strange. He had never heard of a formation that looked like a spirit beast. Seeing the beast head appear, Zhenming didn't dare to be careless. He threw the token in his hand into the monster's mouth. After a while, the monster slowly closed its mouth, but its closed eyes slowly opened. When it saw Zhenming, the monster seemed to be angry. Seeing this, Zhenming opened his mouth and sprayed a strand of his life origin into the monster's left eye. Then, Zhenming's right hand continuously formed seals and hit the monster's right eye. With Zhenming's seals, the monster's right eye gradually turned blue. As for its left eye, it had already turned red when the life origin was sprayed into it. When one of the monster's eyes was almost pure red and the other was almost pure blue, the monster that appeared at the entrance of the hall suddenly opened its mouth. Zhenming reached his hand into the monster's mouth, and with a flash of light, his identity token was taken out. Then, a red and blue light slowly extended from the monster's mouth. It was a narrow path of light. The red and blue path of light extended to Zhenming's feet and stopped moving. Zhenming pointed his finger and said to Xiao Hua, Take your identity token out of your storage bag. Leave your storage bag here. Go through this flight of stairs. The magic tools used by aura refining disciples are in the first room. The other rooms are used by foundation establishment disciples and above. There is a restriction in the middle. Your identity token can't pass through, so don't force your way through. Also, as a disciple participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly, you only have the right to choose one magic tool. Don't take more than that. Thank you, Deacon. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and took his identity token out of his storage bag. He handed the bag to Jinming and looked at the path of light under his feet. He lifted his leg and was about to step on it. Jinming hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, "Actually, the quality of a magic tool can't be judged by its appearance. Many inconspicuous magic tools might be very powerful. Also, there are some damaged magic tools in the East Room. Some of them are fragments of magic tools." Jinming's words were vague. Xiao Hua nodded slightly and stepped on the path of light. Sure enough, without Xiao Hua taking a step, the path of light automatically shrank and brought Xiao Hua into the mouth of the monster. When Xiao Hua's figure entered the mouth of the monster, the same two-colored light sprinkled on Xiao Hua's body like a drizzle. The identity token in Xiao Hua's hand emitted a faint brilliance and absorbed the light. Behind the monster's mouth was the door of the hall that Xiao Hua saw before. Xiao Hua walked forward and pushed with his arms. The door opened silently. What entered Xiao Hua's eyes was a rather large hall. There were many big and small bubbles floating in the hall. The bubbles were transparent, and each of them contained a magic tool and a jade slip. Haha! When Xiao Hua saw this, he was overjoyed. He flew forward and waved his hand to find a bubble. The bubble flew in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua stretched his hand and easily reached into the bubble. When Xiao Hua took out a magic tool that looked like a flute, the bubble didn't fly away. Instead, it stopped in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. According to the jade slip, this flute was a rare magic tool that could attack with sound. When combined with music, it could make the enemy fall into an illusion. Combined with music? Xiao Hua immediately thought of Ancestor Jin Qing from Jinlei Palace. He thought to himself, "I'm afraid that only someone like Ancestor Jin Qing could use this magic tool." Soon after, Xiao Hua put the flute and the jade slip into the bubble. The bubble slowly flew away again. After that, Xiao Hua found a few more magic tools in the hall. Some were whips, some were plates, and there was also a very exquisite-looking armor. However, Xiao Hua felt that they weren't ideal. He looked at the air in the hall again and saw so many bubbles. Xiao Hua frowned. It was very troublesome to search one by one. Moreover, his divine sense couldn't penetrate the bubbles. He could only take the magic tools out of the bubbles to know their specific effects. It seemed that what Jinming said about fate was true. When he wanted to search for it again, he saw a red and blue light path stretching out from the western wall. Oh, this path leads to the inside. Xiao Hua looked at it with envy. He knew that it should be a magic tool used by a Foundation Establishment cultivator. It might even be a magic tool used by a Golden Core cultivator. And let's go to the East Room first. Since the deacon reminded me, maybe there's something good there? Even if it's a magic tool fragment, it might be more powerful than a magic tool. Xiao Hua then turned his gaze to a small door on the east side of the hall. The inside of the door was very different from the hall. It was very ordinary, just like a room in an ordinary house where junk was stored. There was a rough table with all kinds of strange junk on it. Of course, it was junk. Xiao Hua first saw something that looked like a flying sword, but the tip of the sword was long gone. Next to the flying sword, there seemed to be a rhombus-shaped array plate. However, in the middle of the array plate, there was a medium-sized hole. Hee, it's really a fragment. Xiao Hua smiled and used his divine sense to scan the room. He felt that the magic power fluctuations on the junk in the room were very strong. However, the fluctuations didn't follow a pattern. He thought that the magic tool had been destroyed and the array inside was also damaged. Why isn't there a jade slip? Xiao Hua used his divine sense to look at the magic tool fragments in the room and suddenly thought, no wonder no one wants these magic tool fragments. Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and understood. Although these fragments are powerful, I don't know how to use them. What's the use? It's not even as good as a low-level magic tool. Fine. If others don't want it, what do I want? Xiao Hua withdrew his divine sense and turned to leave. However, just as he turned around, in the corner of the room, a palm-sized square bucket with a broken corner attracted his gaze. This thing looks very strange. Xiao Hua thought and walked to the front of the bucket. In fact, what attracted his gaze wasn't the bucket, but a pile of small round balls inside the bucket. -7. Chapter 1590. The 9 small spheres were of different sizes. The big ones were like chicken eggs, and the small ones were like pearls. They were all oval in shape, and their surfaces were bumpy. When Xiao Hua held the 9 small spheres in his hand, he discovered that there were small cracks on each sphere, and some of the cracks even went deep into the center of the sphere. When Xiao Hua's divine sense swept across these spheres, a strange fluctuation of spiritual power came from them. This is a sword pill? Xiao Hua suddenly remembered the sword cultivator from the Huan country that Wu Xian had just mentioned. Didn't that sword cultivator nurture a sword pill in his dantian? And from that sword pill, a flying sword was born? With a flying sword, he could block thousands of magic treasures and move unhindered between heaven and earth? For some reason, when Wu Xian had mentioned sword cultivators, Xiao Hua had a kind of longing in his heart, a kind of longing to fly on a sword. It seemed that he liked flying swords from the bottom of his heart. And now, when he saw the sword pill and discovered that the spiritual power fluctuations in the 9 sword pills were connected to each other, it was obviously a complete set of sword pills. He couldn't help but feel like he had seen something he loved and had a desire to take it for himself. But this sword pill, I don't know how to nurture it, nor do I know how to control a sword. Xiao Hua thought and waved his hand regretfully, and the sword pill floating in the air fell into the small bucket. After putting down the sword pill, Xiao Hua looked at the other fragments of magic treasures. Unfortunately, no matter what the shape of the fragments was or how strong the spiritual power fluctuations were, in Xiao Hua's eyes, they were all ignored. Xiao Hua sighed and unconsciously looked back at the sword pill in the small bucket. At this moment, Xiao Hua kicked something. That thing was extremely heavy, and when Xiao Hua kicked it, he actually staggered. Damn it! Xiao Hua looked down and saw a pair of pitch-black hammers under the table. They were placed in a pile of junk. He scanned with his divine sense and found that there were no spiritual power fluctuations. Demonic tools. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Just as he was about to lower his head to look, his heart stirred. His eyes turned, and he straightened his body. He picked up a palm-sized disc from the table beside him and carefully examined it. After a while, Xiao Hua leisurely walked around this table and went to the other tables. Only after Xiao Hua had more or less finished looking through the fragments in the room did he return to the main hall. However, after looking at the sword pellet and looking at these magic tools again, they were almost all trash. He was not interested at all. Forget it. Forget it. Xiao Hua gritted his teeth, turned around, and walked to the front of the sword pellet. He extended his hand, picked up the small bucket, and turned around to leave the hall. Outside the hall, in front of an oval mirror, Zhang Ming was watching with interest. Next to him, Helplessness's face was ashen. He couldn't help but curse. This little brat is biting off more than he can chew. Uffed. When Zhang Ting heard that, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He wiped his hand and the mirror disappeared. He smiled and said, "Senior brother Helplessness, your disciple, has good taste." Humph. He helplessly flicked his sleeves and turned around to leave. Coincidentally, Xiao Hua came out from the palace and said in surprise, "Master, you've returned so quickly? Come, take a look. Is this thing?" "There's no need to look. That thing is a sword pellet." "Damn it. Why did I talk to you about sword cultivation just now? Let's not talk about how this thing needs to be nurtured from the first layer of aura refining first. Only then can a sword cultivator's heart and mind be connected and achieve the final unity of body and sword. Let's talk about nurturing. Where did you get the sword cultivation method to practice this sword pellet?" Helplessness stopped and said coldly, "Moreover, these 9 sword pellets of yours seem to be a set of sword formations. Even if you're an Aurus core cultivator now, I'm afraid you won't be able to control them freely, right? Hurry up, take advantage of the fact that you haven't left the hall and quickly go back and change them for me." "Ah? Master." Xiao Hua held the small bucket in his hand and was stunned on the spot. "Hee, senior brother Helplessness, your disciple has already left the treasury. You can't go back on the chosen magic tool." As Zhen Ming said that, he formed a seal with his hands. The dual-colored light under Xiao Hua's feet disappeared, and the monster's head above the palace door also slowly disappeared, revealing an ordinary palace door. Humph! Helplessness coldly snorted. His body floated up and flew outside like lightning. Behind him, Jinming chuckled and said, "Senior brother Helplessness, this thunder hall forbids flying." Seeing Helplessness fly away, Xiao Hua's face had an indescribable expression. He walked in front of Jinming and smiled apologetically. "Martial uncle, disciple, hasn't come down from the stairs yet?" Jinming handed over the storage bag in his hand and said with a smile, "Didn't this old man say that everything depends on fate? Maybe you have fate with this set of sword pellets?" "But disciple doesn't have a cultivation method." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "Then this old man wants to help, but is unable to." Jinming spread his hands and said, "Maybe in the future, you can go to Huan country and see if you can obtain their sword technique." "Ah, okay." Xiao Hua helplessly took the storage bag and said, "Then disciple can only take this set of sword pellets." As he said that, Xiao Hua was about to put the small bucket into the storage bag. "Hee, you can take that sword pellet, but why take out this small bucket as well?" Jinming pointed at the small bucket holding the sword pellet and said with a smile, "Oh, this small bucket." Xiao Hua stared blankly. He always thought that this small bucket was together with the sword pellet. Thus, he grinned and said, "You actually took too much. Martial uncle, open the hall door again and disciple will return this small bucket." "Ha ha ha," Jinming laughed loudly. "You wish. How can the treasury let you enter as you wish?" Then, Xiao Hua scratched his head and smiled apologetically. "Then this junior will take the sword pellet. I'll have to trouble Martial uncle to send this small bucket to the treasury." "Forget it, forget it." Jinming waved his hand. "You took a useless sword pellet, and your master blew his beard and glared at you. Who knows how he's cursing this old man in his heart. This small bucket can be considered a gift to you." "It can't be?" Xiao Hua was delighted, but then his face turned bitter. Of course, since this small bucket could be taken away by him, then was there any need to say the value of this sword pellet? No wonder he had no choice but to leave in a huff. Xiao Hua resolutely handed over the small bucket, yes, the bucket and the sword pellet, and said very righteously, "Martial uncle, how can this junior take advantage of the treasury? Why don't you take it back?" "Let's go." Jinming ignored him and turned to leave. As he walked, he said, "This item has been in the treasury for thousands of years. No one has ever taken a good look at it. You have fate with them, so you should take it." "Damn it. I thought this artifact fragment was something good." This was the only thought in Xiao Hua's mind as he followed Jinming out of the hall. Outside the hall, of course, Helpless had already disappeared. Xiao Hua had no choice but to fly back to the myriad Thunder Valley. As if he had already received the news, Xiang Yang also had a strange expression on his face as he greeted Xiao Hua. When Xiao Hua saw Xiang Yang, he asked in a low voice, "Where's Master?" He went back to his residence and didn't come out. "Just now, he said that Master's wife told me to come out and pick you up." Xiang Yang also said in a low voice, "It seems like Master is really angry. He said that he wants me to go to the Lightning Hall to take your 2 artifacts a month later. He doesn't want to see you anymore." "No way." Xiao Hua was unhappy. "Let's go back to the residence first." Xiang Yang brought Xiao Hua back to his residence. Yin Qinglian brought the spirit fruit over and looked at Xiao Hua. She said seriously, "Little junior brother, this is your fault." Xiao Hua's heart trembled. He bowed and said, "Senior sister, please teach me." "AI, didn't you see that Master has been reminding you? Our cultivation is about concentration. Don't be confused by the many spells and abilities. Cultivation is the most important thing. Little junior brother, have you never heard of the phrase, 'Only one of the 3,000 paths of the Tao is enough'?" Xiao Hua shook his head. "I don't know." Qinglian, little junior brother, is a wandering cultivator. In the past, he was afraid that he didn't have enough techniques and spells. How could he know so much? Xiang Yang reminded. "AI, no wonder." Yin Qinglian said sympathetically. "This phrase means that there are 3,000 paths of the same Tao. For us, only one path is enough. Don't covet a second path." Xiao Hua nodded. Little junior brother practiced 3 types of techniques when he was in the qi refinement stage. Now, relying on the concealed fire physique, he directly rushed to the beginning of the 12th layer of the qi refinement stage. It's already very rare, but the most important thing is still to build your foundation. If you can't build your foundation, everything else is useless. Yin Qinglian explained, Master asked your eldest senior brother to guide you more because he wanted you to learn from his lesson. Focus on cultivation and don't be unfocused. The Feather Immortal Gathering this time is a good opportunity for you to exchange ideas. You can choose a suitable magic tool. On one hand, you can show your face at the Feather Immortal Gathering. On the other hand, it's beneficial for the control and growth of your spiritual sense. More importantly, it'll increase your chances of building your foundation. However, you just had to take a sword cultivator's sword pill. That thing is indeed very powerful, but our thunder control sect doesn't have the corresponding sword controlling technique. Aren't you missing a magic tool for no reason? Xiangyang continued, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you'll have something in your heart after taking this sword pill. In the future, you might come across some sword controlling technique and want to practice flying swords. Sword cultivators are naturally different from our Dao sect. If you divide your energy to practice flying swords, won't you delay your own cultivation? Xiao Hua faintly felt that these words might not be true, but it sounded like everything was taken into account. That's right, but he couldn't bear to throw away the sword pill. He could only murmur, Marshal Uncle Jean from the treasure pavilion won't let me return it. Then, I'll take it first? Yin Qinglian looked at Xiangyang, and Xiangyang could only nod. Then take it first, but don't practice it. Yes, I know. Xiao Hua nodded. Then, for dozens of days, Xiao Hua stayed in Xiangyang's cave and practiced the basic magic of the Thunder Control sect with Xiangyang. Their master had no choice but to not show up again. -7. Chapter 1591. Imperial Thunder School's foundational spells were different from Feng Clan's foundational spells. Not only were there more types of spells, but the same spells were also much stronger. For example, the Thunder Palm was considered a high-level spell in Feng Clan's foundational spells, but in Imperial Thunder School's foundational spells, it could only be considered a middle-level spell. Moreover, in the hands of Imperial Thunder School's disciples, not only could they make the thunder bigger or smaller, the shape of the thunder wasn't as simple as a bar. Of course, the difficulty of Imperial Thunder School's foundational spells was also much higher than Feng Clan's foundational spells. Moreover, many of the spells were based on thunder-attributed heaven and earth spiritual energy. For example, the thunder sound transmission technique was much more difficult than the thunder sound transmission talisman. However, if you didn't have a deep understanding of thunder-attributed heaven and earth spiritual energy, you wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Because of this, Xiangyang originally thought that Xiao Hua would need a long time to practice Imperial Thunder School's foundational spells, but the truth made him flabbergasted. Xiao Hua seemed to have a natural sensitivity towards spells. He could understand many spells with just a little bit of guidance. He could even comprehend more complex spells by analogy based on the foundational spells. Although Xiao Hua only followed Xiangyang for a month, Xiangyang already felt that he had nothing to teach him. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't have more spells, but no matter how profound the spells were, Xiao Hua's cultivation wasn't enough. No matter how low-level the spells were, Xiangyang felt that he didn't need to teach them. Xiao Hua could grasp them by himself. After all, when Xiao Hua was a rogue cultivator, he practiced Feng Clan's foundational spells by himself. Therefore, when a month's time was up, Xiangyang simply made a copy of the Myriad Thunder Valley's foundational spells Jade Slip and gave it to Xiao Hua. He had Xiao Hua return to the Eastern Ridge to practice. When he encountered something he couldn't comprehend, he would come back to the cave to teach. Then, he brought Xiao Hua to Bright Thunder Hall again. On one side of the Bright Thunder Hall was a crimson-red mountain wall. On the mountain wall, there were many caves. The caves looked very ordinary, but every disciple who went in and out would have a faint glow around them. Clearly, there were restrictions placed on the caves as well. Xiangyang brought Xiao Hua to the front of the stone wall and stopped moving forward. Instead, He slapped his hand and took out a thunder sound transmission talisman. He activated his magic power, and the thunder sound transmission talisman flew into one of the holes. Before long, an 8th-layer aura refining boy walked out with a storage pouch in his hand. Looking around, he walked up to Xiangyang and bowed respectfully. "Senior Martial Brother, are you Martial Uncle Helpless Disciple?" "I am." Xiangyang returned the greeting. "I have been ordered by my master to retrieve 2 items." The disciple didn't hand over the storage bag. He smiled and said, "Senior Brother, what is the name of the thing you want?" "One is Zhichun, the other is Zhaoguan." It's these 2, said the disciple with a smile. He then handed the interspatial pouch to the 2 of them. Xiangyang took the pouch and passed it to Xiaohua without even looking at it. Xiaohua opened his storage pouch. Inside, there were 2 magic tools. One was in the shape of a sphere, and the other was a ring. Your ring was extremely different from the mirror. Xiaohua took out the ring. Just as he was about to urge his magic power to test it out, he heard Xiangyang say, "Little junior brother, don't be impatient." Soon after, he untied a small storage pouch from his waist and handed it over. He smiled and said, "Junior brother, please take care of this." The boy took the pouch and opened it. He nodded and said, "It's perfect. Thank you, senior brother." He then reached out and took out a jade slip from his bosom. He handed it to Xiangyang and said with a smile, "The spells of these 2 magic tools have been changed. The previous spells are all ineffective. In the future, senior brother, please use this new spell." Xiangyang didn't find it strange. Under Xiaohua's thoughtful gaze, he took the jade slip and cupped his hands. Thank you, your master." You're welcome. The disciple bowed in return. He turned around and entered the cave. After the 2 of them left the stone wall, Xiaohua whispered, "Eldest senior brother, did you give him spirit stones?" Xiangyang nodded and said, "Of course." Asking a tool refiner from Bright Thunder Hall to refine a magic tool naturally requires spirit stones. "How many spirit stones?" Xiaohua whispered, "I still have a lot of spirit stones here. They're all supreme-grade spirit stones. How many can you have?" Xiangyang waved his hand and said, "These are all given by master. Don't worry." "All right," Xiaohua thought for a moment and said. Xiangyang handed the jade slip over and said with a smile, "This is a new spell. In the future, even if the Patriarch of Spirit Husbandry sect comes, he probably won't be able to recognize that this is their magic tool." Very good. Xiaohua took the jade slip and put it into his storage pouch without even looking at it. However, he was still thinking about something. There were some basic tool refinement techniques in his space, but he hadn't had the time to look at them. Now that he saw how magical tool refinement techniques were, he wanted to find some time to look at them. While they were talking, a group of disciples in bright clothes walked over while talking and laughing. Most of these disciples were in the early stage of foundation establishment. There were a few in the middle stage of foundation establishment and chi refinement. When Xiangyang saw them, he frowned slightly and stopped walking, as if he was avoiding them. Xiaohua didn't know why Xiangyang was like this, but he also stood beside Xiangyang. He only glanced at them before lowering his head to think about his own matters. It's this guy." The crowd had obviously already walked past Xiaohua and the others, and a slightly shrill voice called out. Xiaohua felt very strange and couldn't help but raise his head to look. He saw a disciple who wasn't very tall and looked about the same age as Xiaohua a few feet away from him. He had a fierce expression on his face, and one of his hands was pointing at Xiaohua. Xiaohua was stunned and looked around. There was no one beside him other than Xiangyang. "Me?" Xiaohua was surprised. This disciple looked very unfamiliar. However, when Xiaohua looked carefully, his face turned cold and his eyes narrowed slightly. He remembered that the disciple who was pointing at him was an opponent that Xiaohua had encountered in the disciple selection of the Feather Immortal Assembly in the Heavenly Thunder Palace not long ago. However, Xiaohua had encountered more than 200 opponents at that time, and he didn't have the heart to continue fighting, so he didn't remember clearly. If this disciple hadn't pointed at him, he definitely wouldn't have remembered. Thinking of this opponent, who had been forced to death by him using a fireball talisman. "Fourth senior brother, it's this guy." This guy defeated this little brother, and that's why I fell to the 21st place. If it weren't for him, this little brother would definitely have obtained the qualifications to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. That disciple's expression was somewhat angry, and he said to a Middle Foundation Establishment disciple, "This time, this little brother lost the face of my Swallow Thunder Ridge. Even that guy Qiandiheng was able to participate, but this little brother fell behind." When Qiandiheng saw this little brother, he laughed at this little brother. This little brother couldn't find which disciple didn't give my Swallow Thunder Ridge face. So, this is actually a disciple of my Thunderous Thunder Palace? When the fourth senior brother heard this, his face turned cold. He looked past Xiangyang and directly at Xiaohua. The pressure of a Middle Foundation Establishment cultivator was instantly released from his body, and it pressed down on Xiaohua like a mountain. This pressure was very strange. It was a pressure that was naturally formed after a cultivator entered the Foundation Establishment stage. As the cultivator's realm increased, the pressure would also increase. This pressure had nothing to do with dermic powers, it only depended on the realm. Therefore, although Xiaohua's magic power was profound, he had no way of defending against this pressure. Seeing that the pressure was about to land on his body, Xiaohua already felt that the pressure was heavy, and his magic power was stagnating. But at this moment, Xiangyang, who was beside Xiaohua, moved. Xiangyang, who didn't want to cause any trouble, also released his spiritual pressure. In Xiaohua's perception, the release of the spiritual pressure of two Foundation Establishment cultivators was like two perilous waves crashing into each other. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was stirred up, giving rise to a small hurricane. Junior brother Xiangyang. The fourth senior brother sneered. "Is this a disciple of your 10,000 Thunder Valley? How come I have never heard of him?" Xiangyang's expression was indescribable, and he said in a deep voice, "Zhenweisheng, whether my 10,000 Thunder Valley accepts disciples or not doesn't seem to have anything to do with Swallow Thunder Ridge, right? Whether you know or not, Xiaohua is still a disciple of my 10,000 Thunder Valley." Xiaohua? Hehe, not a bad name. Seeing that Xiangyang released his pressure, Zhenweisheng also took advantage of the situation to withdraw his pressure, and said coldly, "However, 10,000 Thunder Valley has always only produced cowards. Xiaohua, are you willing to fight with my Swallow Thunder Ridge disciple on the Thunder Arena?" Hearing this, Xiangyang's expression changed greatly, and he took half a step forward, saying angrily, "What grudge does my 10,000 Thunder Valley have with your Swallow Thunder Ridge? You actually want to fight to the death on the Thunder Arena?" Hearing this, Xiaohua's expression also became slightly angry. Although he didn't know what the Thunder Arena was, it actually involved life and death. How could he not be angry? "Ha ha ha, I told you 10,000 Thunder Valley has always been cowards. Xiangyang, I remember that when someone invited you to the Thunder Arena, you didn't show up. Today, I still haven't officially sent out an invitation. You immediately refused. With such cowardice, how can you achieve the Great Tao?" Zhenweisheng's words became more and more unpleasant and even overbearing. "My junior brother Xiaohua's cultivation is only at the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. You, a Middle Foundation Establishment senior, actually extended an invitation. Don't you feel ashamed?" Xiangyang was unmoved and snorted disdainfully. "If you agree, my Swallow Thunder Ridge will naturally have disciples of the same cultivation level to receive you. How can I bully the weak?" Seeing this, Xiaohua took a step forward and berated, Shut up." Xiangyang grabbed Xiaohua and scolded, "Elder brother is here. What right do you have to speak?" "Yes, disciple obeys eldest senior brother's order." Xiaohua lowered his head and said. Xiangyang looked at Zhenweisheng with a cold smile and said confidently, "My junior brother obtained the qualification to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Even if he agrees, do you dare to go to the Thunder Arena?" Fourth senior brother. The disciple next to him was shocked and angry and said, He actually snatched my qualification. I must take his life." "Shut up." Zhenweisheng snorted coldly and glared at the disciple. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go." The surrounding people all fiercely glared at Xiaohua and Xiangyang, and then hurriedly left with Zhenweisheng. Xiao Hua was left with a watery expression on his face. He narrowed his eyes as he watched their departing figures and said in a low voice, "Where there are people, there will be fighting. Master's wife is right." -7. Chapter 1592. As Xiang Yang walked out of Thunderflash Hall, Xiao Hua heard the whole story clearly. It turned out that the entire Imperial Thunder sect was not a peaceful and harmonious big family like Xiao Hua imagined. Just as Xiang Yang had said before, not only were there rogue cultivators, cultivator families, and disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, but there were also grudges between these disciples of different identities. Therefore, in order to settle these grudges, Imperial Thunder sect had a special rule. That was, no one was allowed to fight outside the Thunder Arena, especially if it was life-threatening. As long as it was discovered, both sides would be severely punished. On the Thunder Arena, both sides' life and death were determined by the heavens. No matter if it was the 8 great Thunder Palaces or the sect master and elders, none of them would interfere. Of course, it was not easy to enter the Thunder Arena. Both sides had to agree and sign a life and death contract. The masters of both sides had to know and report to Heavenly Thunder Palace. Imperial Thunder sect's action was naturally to minimize the internal friction between the disciples of Imperial Thunder sect. But just as Zhuo Minghui said, where there were people, there would be fighting. The Thunder Arena of Imperial Thunder sect was never idle. Every once in a while, there would be disciples of different cultivation levels who would lose their lives on it. As for Thunder Ridge, it was the same as Myriad Thunder Valley, a place in Imperial Thunder sect's Thunder Mountain Range. However, this place was where Imperial Thunder sect's Thunder Palace refined their weapons. In Imperial Thunder sect, weapon refiners and alchemists were rare. Their status was higher than ordinary cultivators of the same cultivation level. Thunder Ridge was the main force of Thunder Palace's weapon refinement, so its status in Thunder Palace was much higher than Myriad Thunder Valley. Naturally, there were many disciples in Swallow Thunder Ridge. Although Zhenqikue's master, Zhangjia, was an early gold core stage cultivator, Zhangjia had many martial brothers. There were quite a few early and middle gold core stage cultivators. Not to mention Zhangjia's master and martial uncle, they were all close to nascent soul stage. Maybe one day they would successfully conceive a nascent soul and become a cultivator of Imperial Thunder sect who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Thunder Meng Taoist. Because of this, Thunder Meng Taoist often turned a blind eye to Thunder Ridge and did not interfere too much. In addition, Lei Meng Taoist was not a disciple of Imperial Thunder sect, which was somewhat different from Swallow Thunder Ridge. Therefore, some of Lei Meng Taoist's traits had resulted in Swallow Thunder Ridge being arrogant and domineering. After listening to this, Xiao Hua understood in his heart that this Zhenqikue should be the same as the Yin family's Yin Yinwei, conceited and arrogant. He couldn't bear to see others stronger than him. Moreover, he had snatched away his right to participate in the Feather Immortal Conference. So, he was afraid that this matter would not be settled peacefully. At worst, I won't go to the Thunder Arena. Xiang Yang forced a smile and said, in the past, a disciple of Swallow Thunder Ridge had a grudge with me and wanted to fight me to the death. I don't care about him at all. He can't do anything about it. Xiao Hua was somewhat baffled. His eldest senior brother was an honest person who never caused trouble. How could he have offended other disciples? Thus, he smiled and said, so, eldest senior brother has also spoiled other people's plans? He, of course. Xiang Yang looked into the distance. Who doesn't have exciting moments? Back then, when I married your senior sister-in-law into the Myriad Thunder Valley, I also made many people sad. Haha, Xiao Hua clapped and said, that's how it should be. Xiang Yang's face became somewhat spirited. He comforted him and said, don't say that you participated in the selection of the Feather Immortal Conference because someone instructed you to do so. Even if you participated yourself and snatched away that guy's right, what reason would he have to ask you to go to the Thunder Arena? Besides, if it really doesn't work out, you just have to agree. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't speak, Xiang Yang added, if it still doesn't work out, you can find Grandmaster Lei Meng or the sect leader. Don't worry, eldest senior brother. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, that guy was already scared by me. Just now, he was just a fox pretending to be a tiger. If I really let him go to the Thunder Arena, he will definitely be scared out of his wits. Eldest senior brother, don't worry about me. Then, Xiaohua bid farewell to Xiangyang and flew back to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden under Xiangyang's concerned gaze. After parting ways with Xiangyang, Xiaohua was very careful. Along the way, not only did he release his divine sense, but he also released his Buddhist sense to the maximum. He was afraid that Swallow Thunder Ridge's disciples would ambush him on the way. Fortunately, although he did meet a few disciples along the way, they were all unrelated. After saluting each other, they left. As soon as he returned to the Eastern Ridge, Xiaohua immediately opened the magic formation. Only after the magic formation closed did he feel at ease. He knew very well that if Shen Qikue wanted to make trouble for him, he wouldn't do it himself. Not to mention Jin Weisheng. Even the other Foundation establishment disciples of Swallow Thunder Ridge could make a move and kill him without anyone knowing. What he said to Xiangyang before was not so much to comfort Xiangyang, but to give himself courage from the bottom of his heart. Damn it, if I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have won a single match and lost to them all. Xiaohua sits on a chair in the Immortal's Cave, secretly regretting. But how would I know that other than that disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace whose name I don't know, Jin Qikue, this guy, was also arranged by someone else? Besides, if I didn't participate in this selection, I wouldn't have the qualifications to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. How would I have obtained so many benefits? Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and patted his hand. He took out the small bucket and the set of 9 sword pills from his storage pouch. With a wave of his hand, the 9 sword pills floated in front of his eyes. The more he looked at them, the more delighted he became. If I can obtain the cultivation method of the sword pills, I can also use my sword to move unhindered in the world. Wouldn't that be great? Xiaohua thought. He didn't seem to make any movements, but a pair of huge black hammers suddenly appeared under his feet. Xiaohua stood up and kicked the hammers with his feet. The hammers didn't move in the slightest. Then, he bent down and used his hand to pick up the hammers. He tested their weight and said with a smile, "These hammers are really not ordinary heavy. If they were a bit heavier, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy to send them into the space. My actions will be discovered by Marshal Uncle Zhenming." Soon after, he used 70% of his strength with one arm. With a whoosh, the devil hammer of unknown material was actually lifted up by him. Unfortunately, just as he lifted it halfway, Xiaohua let out a cry of surprise, ouch. Immediately after, Xiaohua actually used all of his strength to lift the devil hammer above his head. Ha ha ha, Xiaohua put down the devil hammer. He was extremely happy and said to himself, I have to use all of my strength to hold it. If I use it to smash someone, what would be the effect? I'm afraid it would be even more powerful than the tip of the devil's spear. Humph, with this sword pill and this devil hammer, I should participate in this selection. Xiaohua waved his hand and sent the devil hammer and the sword pill into the space. He thought to himself, I am a loose cultivator. What kind of situation have I not seen? You're just a second-generation ancestor of Swallow Thunder Ridge. Use whatever methods you have. If I don't kill you, I'm not surnamed Xiao. Soon after, Xiaohua's gaze landed on the small bucket. He seemed to have forgotten that his surname wasn't Xiao in the first place. That small bucket didn't hold the sword pill and looked even more tattered. Apart from a missing corner, there was a small hole at the bottom of the bucket. It couldn't even hold water. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the small bucket flew into the air. It flipped left and right up and down. Xiaohua released his divine sense and discovered that there were faint fluctuations of spiritual power on this small bucket. However, it was extremely weak. If this small bucket was very light, Xiaohua would almost think it was a devil tool. Which magic treasure's fragment is this? Xiaohua thought and tried several magic treasure refining methods that he knew. Unfortunately, when he hit it with his spells, that small bucket didn't have any reaction. It really is a magic treasure. So arrogant. Xiaohua mocked himself. He waved his hand and was just about to put it into the space when he suddenly thought of something. He thought to himself, Lu Chongqi's black iron needle refining method mentioned the use of blood. This method is a type of blood sacrifice for magic treasures. Should I try it? But immediately after, Xiaohua hesitated again. Master said that although the blood sacrifice can refine magic weapons, that's only the method of recognizing a master after the magic weapon has been refined. It's only the final step. The requirement for the user's cultivation is quite high. Right now, I'm only at the qi refinement stage. How can I dare to use it? Although this small bucket is a magic treasure fragment, I'm afraid it can also suck my magic power dry? Thinking, Xiaohua dispelled this idea. He waved his hand and put the small bucket into the space. But faintly, Xiaohua felt that he had missed something. He frowned and thought for a long time. When he came to the pill room and cleaned up the soul-gathering pill, he warmed the pill furnace again. He looked at the three-legged vermilion bird and phoenix pattern furnace on the Samadhi true fire. His eyes suddenly lit up and he slapped his forehead. I was stupid. It's true that the small bucket can't be refined, but what about the sword pill? The sword pill is nurtured in the Dantian by sword cultivators since they were young. How can a sword cultivator's cultivation level be high? Moreover, if the sword pill doesn't recognize its master, how can it be put into the Dantian? Thinking about it made Xiaohua's heart warm, but reason stopped him. This is only my own guess. If it's not like this, wouldn't the sword pill be destroyed? Moreover, if it affects my cultivation, the losses outweigh the gains. Forget it. Forget it. I'd better concentrate on refining pills. Xiaohua calmed his mind and concentrated on refining pills, putting the matter of the sword pill aside. Time passed extremely quickly. 10 months passed in the blink of an eye as Xiaohua refined pills, consumed pills, refined pills, and familiarized himself with magic tools. During this time, no one came to the eastern mountain range to cause trouble. There were also no messages or disturbances from the myriad Thunder Valley. Xiaohua's cultivation level also steadily increased under the cultivation of the soul-gathering pill. Although he didn't reach the middle stage of the 12th layer of the qi refinement realm, he still consolidated the early stage of the 12th layer of the qi refinement realm. Everything developed according to Xiaohua's progress as an outstanding disciple. On this day, Xiaohua was practicing the fire crow net. He waved his hand, and a net of fire as thin as silk flew into the air. His divine sense swept over a nearby boulder that was the size of a crouching ox. Xiaohua pointed his finger, and the fire net suddenly enlarged, landing on the crouching ox boulder. Clap, clap. Xiaohua clapped his hand, and a flock of fiery red crows the size of a palm flew out from various parts of the fire net. The fiery red of the crows was mixed with a trace of purple, looking very gorgeous. -7. Chapter 1593. The fire crows flew towards the boulder and entered it. After a while, Xiaohua pointed his finger and the fire crow net flew back into his hand. Looking again, the boulder had already turned into ashes. Wonderful! Xiaohua clapped his hands and smiled. I had an idea and refined the Samadhi true fire into the fire crow net. The power of the fire crows increased by 50%. Then, with a wave of his hand, he took out several top-quality fire attribute spirit stones. He grabbed a few already dimmed spirit stones from the fire net and replaced them. He said with some heartache, unfortunately, the power increased, but the consumption of spirit stones is also obvious. If I didn't have a lot of fire attribute spirit stones here, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to use it. At this moment, the token in Xiaohua's bosom moved. Xiaohua took out the token and pointed his finger. The array opened and a red message talisman flew into Xiaohua's hand. Io, Master is here. Xiaohua was shocked. He quickly extinguished the earth fire and put the pill furnace into his space. Looking around, there was nothing strange. He quickly flew out of the array. Sure enough, outside the array, not only Wu Qi, even Zhuo Minghui, Xiang Yang, and Yin Qinglian were standing in the air with a smile. Only Wu Qi's face was as calm as water. No expression could be seen. Master's wife. Xiaohua greeted in surprise. Hee, Xiaohua, I haven't seen you for a few days, and your cultivation has indeed increased. Yin Qinglian helped Xiaohua up and said with a smile. Seeing Xiaohua's cultivation progress, Wu Qi's expression also eased. He snorted and said, What is this? Only foundation building is true progress. Eldest senior brother. Senior sister. Xiao Hua greeted Xiang Yang and the others. Let's go. Take master in to see. Wu Qi waited for Xiao Hua to finish greeting and said indifferently, Yes, master. Master's wife. Please. Xiao Hua opened the array and invited the four to enter. Wu Qi looked around and shook his head. Aside from the abundant fire attribute spirit energy here, the rest of the world's spirit energy is lacking. It seems like a good place for disciples with fire attribute physiques to cultivate, but this fire attribute spirit energy feels extremely violent and difficult to refine into true essence. Even if you forcibly refine it, the true essence will inevitably be difficult to control. It's not good for stabilizing the realm and strengthening the foundation. This is not a place for you to cultivate after you build your foundation. Xiao Hua smiled wryly. All right, master understands. Disciple naturally won't stay here for long. Later, when I build my foundation, I'll find a place next to Master's Immortal's cave to set up a residence so that I can often receive Master's teachings. Helpless, he unhappily rolled his eyes at Xiao Hua. You just don't make your master angry? No, no, no. Xiao Hua didn't expect that helplessness would actually say this, and promptly smiled apologetically. Disciple is still waiting for master to give pointers to disciple to step into the late stage of foundation establishment. Bullshit. He scolded helplessly. Xiao Hua was stunned. He scratched his head, not knowing what he did wrong. Helplessness looked at Xiang Yang and said, Xiang Yang's son is a spirit-severing cultivator. How can you only reach the late stage of foundation establishment? You're at least a tribulation-transcending cultivator. Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian blushed. Zhua Minghui covered her mouth and scolded. You old bastard. You guessed that he's in the late stage of the foundation-building realm and you want your disciple to go through the tribulation. But as soon as the words left his mouth, he suddenly felt that it was inappropriate. Wasn't he insinuating that Xiang Yang? He promptly turned his head and said, Qinglian, master's wife wasn't talking about you. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh until he bent over. Helplessness also laughed loudly when he saw Xiao Hua laughing. His previous seriousness had long disappeared. Only Zhua Minghui punched Helplessness a few times with her fists, and her face was bright red again. Master, what business do you have here? Xiao Hua and the others finished laughing and asked respectfully. Helplessness was happy and said, What business could there be? You're one of the 2 disciples of my thunder-shocking palace participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly. I've come to invite you. Xiao Hua was stunned. So fast. Of course, he had been concentrating on alchemy and cultivation. He felt that only a few days had passed, but counting with his fingers, several months had already passed. Cultivation knows no time. Xiao Hua sighed with emotion again. Are you ready? Helplessness saw that Xiao Hua was in a daze and was unhappy in his heart, so he urged, Disciple is already ready. Xiao Hua promptly nodded. Is that so? Why didn't I see you go to Thunder Bright Hall to exchange for yellow talismans? I also didn't see you go to receive the offerings? Helplessness asked back. Of course. Xiao Hua slapped his forehead when he heard this. He vaguely heard Xiang Yang mention that there was a place to exchange for yellow talismans and spirit stones in the Thunder-Shocking Palace. If the disciples of Thunder-Shocking Palace needed them, they could exchange for them with their own offerings. As for his own offerings, to be honest, he really didn't want to waste a day for those spirit stones and pills. Master's wife gave me some pills last time, and disciple also exchanged for some pills last time, so I didn't go to receive this year's offerings. Moreover, disciple feels that it's delaying cultivation, so I can just receive it once a year, right? Xiao Hua promptly said, I know you have some in stock, but you should also prepare some yellow talismans and the like. They'll be useful in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Helplessness said unhappily, Yes, disciple understands. I'll exchange for them when I go to the Thunder-Shocking Palace. Xiao Hua's head was covered in sweat as he hurriedly said, When you go, everything will be too late. Helplessness waved his hand and said, Your eldest senior brother has already prepared them for you. Hee, thank you for your trouble, eldest senior brother. Xiao Hua's heart was warm as he took the storage pouch that Xiang Yang handed over. He opened it and took a look. There were some spirit stones, some pills, and a pile of yellow talismans. Among them, most of them were high-grade fireball talismans. At the 12th level of Qi refining, one has divine sense. However, divine sense has just been born and is still very weak. It can't be used for long periods of time. These yellow talismans are still very useful in the competition. Xiangyang explained, I've also conveniently received your offerings. You don't have to run anymore. Eldest senior brother. Thank you. Xiaohua looked at Xiangyang and saw that there were a lot more spirit stones and pills in the storage pouch. He knew that the yellow talismans were all exchanged by Xiangyang himself. He felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. Really? Xiangyang wanted to be his eldest senior brother more than Gong Mingwei. He even felt that he was his nephew. We have a lot of offerings. There's no need for them. Xiangyang waved his hand. Many of them are for Master and Master's wife. You don't have to thank me. Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, You silly child. You are all disciples of Myriad Thunder Valley. It's normal for you to be intimate with each other. There's no need to thank me. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua smiled and turned to ask Xiangyang, What does eldest senior brother need? Me. Xiangyang was stunned and shook his head. I don't need anything. I only hope that youngest junior brother can build his foundation as soon as possible and bring glory to my Myriad Thunder Valley. Xiaohua said with a bitter face, Eldest senior brother, although Master is next to me, you don't have to remind me. Can't you also give me a chance? Xiangyang quickly waved his hand and said, If youngest junior brother has the heart, you should ask Master. He's about to condense his core. I'm afraid he needs some things. Congratulations, Master. Xiaohua beamed with joy and cupped his hands. What can this disciple do for Master? I want dry distance pills. Do you have any? Xiangyang helplessly glared at Xiaohua and said, You should worry more about yourself. At this time, Xiaohua obviously knew what dry distance pills were. Dry distance pills were medicinal pills that foundation-building cultivators took when they condensed their core. They were exactly the same as foundation-building pills for aura-refining cultivators. Xiaohua didn't have such things. He could only smile apologetically and said, Master, you're asking for too much. Hee, don't mind your master. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile, as if she was protecting her nephew. When he condenses his core, the school will naturally give him dry distance pills. I'm just afraid that he won't be able to condense his core, so there's no reason to ask the school for them. I'll help you condense your core tomorrow, Xiangyang helplessly said. Zhuo Minghui also ignored him. She glanced at Xiangyang and said in a low voice, On the contrary, your eldest senior brother. If you have the chance, you can find. However, without waiting for Zhuo Minghui to say anything, Xiangyang immediately interrupted, Thank you for worrying about this disciple, but youngest junior brother is only an aura refining disciple. How can he find that thing? It's better not to tell youngest junior brother. There's no reason for him to worry about it. Zhuo Minghui smiled bitterly and didn't say anything else. It seemed that thing was really hard to find. Even if they were late-stage foundation-building cultivators, they didn't have any certainty of finding it. Just when Xiaohua's curiosity was piqued, Yin Qinglian considerately said from the side, Husband, I know you don't want to burden youngest junior brother, but don't forget, youngest junior brother used to be a loose cultivator. In my country of Xi's cultivation world, he wandered for more than 20 years and cultivated to the 10th level of aura refining with his own ability. If you tell him about this, maybe youngest junior brother will have a way. Yin Qinglian's meaning was the same as Zhen Ye's, but Xiaohua was very happy when he heard it. He also smiled and said, Eldest senior brother, you don't need to be polite with younger brother. Younger brother's luck has always been very good. If eldest senior brother tells younger brother might be able to take it out and give it to you right now. How could Xiangyang be willing to tell? He repeatedly waved his hand. Forget it. Who knows how many disciples in our Imperial Thunder sect who can't advance to the next level have searched all the major trading markets without any results. How can you, an aura refining disciple, find it? It's useless to tell you. Useless? Why don't you tell me? Xiaohua's heart was moved. He said with a smile, Younger brother only heard that embryonic breathing pills are useful for aura refining disciples to break through bottlenecks. I still don't know what medicinal pills foundation building cultivators use to break through. If eldest senior brother wants embryonic breathing pills, younger brother has them here. What? Xiaohua, you have embryonic breathing pills? Xiaohua suddenly asked. Could it be eldest senior brother needs embryonic breathing pills? Xiaohua was stunned, but when he looked at Xiangyang, there wasn't any joy on his face. Instead, there was joy on Xiaohua's face. Yes, master. Disciple has embryonic breathing pills, and I was preparing to take them myself. Xiaohua pretended to pat his storage bag and took out a bottle of embryonic breathing pills. He said, Disciple spent a lot of effort to find 3 pills. Xiaohua didn't wait for Xiaohua to finish speaking. With a wave of his hand, the jade bottle fell into Xiaohua's hand. Xiaohua opened the bottle and took a sniff. He said with a smile, Sure enough, it's embryonic breathing pills. Master is taking them away. As he said that, he didn't wait for Xiaohua to agree. He pointed his finger, and an embryonic breathing pill flew out of the jade bottle. He then threw the jade bottle back to Xiaohua. Xiaohua was already in the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, so he naturally didn't need embryonic breathing pills. After he took the bottle, he said with a smile, Master, is 1 pill okay? If not, take a few more. At this moment, Xiaohua took the embryonic breathing pills and rolled his eyes at Xiaohua. If 1 pill can break through a bottleneck, then 1 pill will naturally be okay. More pills will be useless. If 1 pill can't, then more pills will be a waste. However, Xiaohua, master. I won't tell you now. When you come back from the Feather Immortal Assembly, there will be benefits for you. Xiaohua turned his head and asked Xiangyang, eldest martial brother, you don't need this, right? Xiangyang shook his head. However, when he saw that Xiaohua actually had such a rare embryonic breathing pill, he seemed to have something to say, but he swallowed the words back down. Looking at this eldest martial brother of his who was always thinking for other people and was also somewhat hesitant, Xiaohua was also helpless. He put the jade bottle away. At the side, Yin Qinglian was somewhat anxious, but Xiangyang slightly shook his head at her. Yin Qinglian could only bite her lips and hold back from saying anything. Zhuo Minghui saw everything. She helplessly and happily put away the embryonic breathing pills. She could only say, Xiaohua, actually, what your eldest martial brother needs is about the same as embryonic breathing pills. It's one of the main ingredients for refining embryonic breathing pills. What? Xiaohua was stunned. The expression on his face was somewhat frozen. He said inwardly, It can't be so coincidental, right? Sure enough, he heard Zhuo Minghui continue. Qi condensation cultivators use medicinal pills to break through bottlenecks. Foundation establishment cultivators can also use them to break through bottlenecks. However, that medicinal pill isn't called embryonic breathing pills, but embryonic reflection pills. The refining method for embryonic reflection pills has already been lost. Then, what eldest martial brother is using? Could it be the mother-child spirit fruit? Xiaohua asked somewhat stutteringly. Yes, it's the mother-child spirit fruit. At the side, Yin Qinglian really couldn't help but say, however, the mother-child spirit fruit and the one used for embryonic breathing pills are different in age. It won't be effective unless it's several hundred years old. Alas, several years ago, I heard that a several hundred-year-old mother-child spirit fruit appeared in an auction in Yinyuan City. Because the disciples of Splendid Sect, Qiqiao Sect, and Xuanyin School weren't prepared enough, they didn't succeed. Many disciples of my Imperial Thunder Sect went to Yinyuan City to try their luck. In the end, you also know that junior martial brother Qinghua was one of them. He didn't find the mother-child spirit fruit, but instead encountered other things. Hearing this, Xiaohua's expression became even more brilliant. However, he still had some hesitation in his heart. That mother-child spirit fruit had been in his space for so long. What year was it now? Even he himself didn't know. In short, it was definitely much older than the one he exchanged for the cultivation method that year. If he suddenly took it out, many thanks for mistress's concern. Xiang Yang's expression was extremely calm. He bowed and said, This disciple has already cultivated to foundation establishment. Even if my cultivation can't advance even half a step, having master and mistress's concern is already enough. This kind of thing can't be asked for, so don't let junior martial brother worry. Ha ha ha, can't be asked for. Hearing this, Xiaohua laughed loudly. In his heart, he seemed to have thought it through a bit. Although family love couldn't be casually tested, if one put family love to the back of one's mind because of misgivings, then, was it still family love? -7. Chapter 1594. Seeing Xiaohua laugh, everyone was slightly stunned. Xiaohua took the storage bag from his waist and handed it to Xiangyang. Eldest senior brother, take a look. What's inside? Xiangyang's heart skipped a beat, and his tone stuttered. No, no. Xiaohua threw the storage bag to Xiangyang. Didn't eldest senior brother say that it can only be found by chance? Now that you've encountered it, it's eldest senior brother's opportunity. Xiangyang didn't speak. Yin Qinglian flew over and snatched the storage bag from Xiangyang's hands. When she opened it, she couldn't help but exclaim. It's really the mother-child spirit fruit. Really? Helplessly, he also jumped up. With a wave of his hand, that storage bag was taken over by him again. He stuck his head out to look at the things inside and laughed. Ha ha ha. Xiangyang, you're lucky. Xiaohua, there's nothing good in here. Only this mother-child spirit fruit, eh? Xiaohua, why didn't you put the mother-child spirit fruit in the jade box? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Master, disciple is poor. I couldn't find any jade box, so I just casually left it there. You poor pedantic. Helplessly scolding, he slapped his hand and took out a jade box from the storage bag. He handed it to Xiangyang, then pointed at the storage bag. That mother-child spirit fruit flew out of the storage bag and floated in the air. This mother-child spirit fruit? Zhuo Minghui, who hadn't spoken all this time, opened her mouth in shock when she saw the mother-child spirit fruit floating in the air. Her face was filled with disbelief. Of course, the mother-child spirit fruit in the air was still the same, but it was covered in golden runes. Those runes were denser and more lifelike than the last time Xiaohua saw them. This mother-child spirit fruit is probably several thousand years old. Yin Qinglian also woke up at this time and muttered, "It can't be?" Xiaohua also turned, pale with fright, and said, "Disciple thinks that this thing is several hundred years old." "What do you know?" Helplessly, he continued, "How can several hundred years old runes be so dense?" Hee. Disciple only knows that this thing is a mother-child spirit fruit. Last time, that person said it was several hundred years old. Disciple thought that this was also several hundred years old. Hua said embarrassedly. You have another one? Xiangyang was stunned. That's right, Xiaohua said disapprovingly. Little brother's mother spirit fruit was exchanged for a heavenly laws embodiment technique in Yinyuan City? Otherwise, where did little brother get this cultivation method from? You. Xiangyang was speechless. Others couldn't find the mother-child spirit fruit in their entire lives, but this guy had taken out two in one go. Moreover, one was several hundred years old, and the other was several thousand years old. But if Xiangyang knew that as soon as Xiaohua's mother-child spirit fruit was picked, the other mother-child spirit fruit in his space would immediately ripen and be ready to be picked at any time, what would he think? Hehe, disciple, do you have 1,000-year-old Lingwan grass? He chuckled helplessly. Master, this disciple's storage pouch is with you. Do you think this disciple still has more? Xiaohua innocently replied, helplessly shaking his hand. He threw the storage bag to Xiaohua and said, Your storage bag is so tattered. Where would you find the lingy grass? Xiaohua reached out to catch it and tied it to his waist. He smiled apologetically and said, Besides, this disciple doesn't even know what a lingwan grass is. How could I have it? Helplessly rolling his eyes, he threw a jade slip to Xiaohua and said, You brat, you're lucky. Help Master take a look. If you can find it, Master will give you benefits. Xiaohua took the jade slip and threw it into the storage bag without even looking. Master, don't count on this disciple. This mother-child spirit fruit is also a coincidence. Himph, I didn't count on you in the first place. I just wanted you to be careful. Helplessly looking at Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian, who were still somewhat absent-minded, he berated, Enough. It's like you haven't seen anything good. Quickly put this thing away properly. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiangyang put the mother-child spirit fruit into the jade box in a fluster and carefully put it away in the storage bag. The mother-child spirit fruit is not comparable to the embryonic breathing pill. Who knows how many Foundation establishment disciples in the Imperial Thunder sect dream of it. And this mother-child spirit fruit is only enough for you alone. You must not let this slip. Helplessly warned. This disciple understands. This disciple understands. Xiangyang nodded repeatedly. Good. Do you have the sect's secret technique? I have it long ago. Go back and enter seclusion right now. Helplessly, he instructed. Perhaps when Xiaohua returns, you can also exit seclusion. However, even if you exit seclusion, you absolutely cannot speak of it. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiangyang nodded, but looking at Xiaohua, he said, However, how can this disciple not see little junior brother off this time? Bullshit. It's not like he's not coming back. What's there to see him off for? Helplessly glaring at him, he said, It's not easy for you to have such an opportunity. Why don't you hurry up and grasp it? If someone steals this thing, you won't even have time to regret it. Eldest senior brother, hurry up and go back. Xiaohua also advised, This is the only thing I have. In the future, I'm afraid it'll be hard to come across it again. When I return, I'll see the glory of middle stage Foundation establishment eldest senior brother. Little junior brother, I thank you very much. Xiangyang patted Xiaohua's shoulder and laughed. Although Xiangyang didn't say much, just the word thank you made Xiaohua feel the sincerity in his heart. Thinking about the things Xiangyang had done for him in the past few years, Xiaohua's heart also felt a lot better. Little junior brother, I have to go back and protect your eldest senior brother, so I won't see you off. I hope you can show your talent at the Feather Immortal Assembly and win glory for our Imperial Thunder sect and our myriad Thunder Valley. Yin Qinglian said sincerely. Although Xiaohua didn't plan to show his talent at the Feather Immortal Assembly, he was too embarrassed to say it in front of helplessness, so he could only smile and say, Junior brother will do his best. Then, Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian said goodbye and rushed back to the myriad Thunder Valley to enter seclusion. Xiaohua also followed helplessness and Zhuo Minghui out of the Eastern Ridge's spell formation. Before leaving the spell formation, Xiaohua still followed helplessness's instructions and picked some blazed dawn grass, and had helplessness bring it to the Thunderous Palace. As for the Eastern Ridge spell formation's command tablet, helplessness temporarily held it and would return it to Xiaohua when he returned. After flying with helplessness for a while, Xiaohua finally understood that their destination was the Heavenly Thunder Palace. He naturally didn't have the chance to go to the Thunderous Palace to exchange for any yellow talismans or medicinal pills. If Xiangyang hadn't helped him exchange some in advance, he really would have gone on the journey empty-handed. The Heavenly Thunder Palace was the same as usual. There wasn't the slightest bit of celebration, and it wasn't even as lively as the day of the disciple selection. Only when Xiaohua walked into the Spring Thunder Palace did he see a trace of liveliness. He wasn't the latest to arrive, but he definitely wasn't the first either. At this moment, the Spring Thunder Palace was already occupied by about 10 12th layer Qi refining disciples. There were also Foundation establishment cultivators next to these disciples. Looking at the way they were giving pointers, they should be their masters. Needless to say, Xiaohua met all these disciples. The female disciple who expelled him from the illusory realm as soon as they met was also standing there, and a similarly cold and elegant late-stage Foundation establishment female cultivator was whispering something to her. Xiaohua followed helplessness in, and naturally attracted the attention of others. Every disciple revealed a trace of surprise when they saw Xiaohua, because Xiaohua's flying technique left a deep impression on these people. It was something they couldn't catch up to no matter what. At the same time, after the initial surprise, a trace of disdain appeared on their faces. After all, passing by running away was really shameful. Xiaohua was too lazy to pay attention to them. His gaze swept past them, and he followed helplessness and Zhuo Minghui to a corner of the main hall and stood there steadily. However, before he could stand properly, another 3 people quickly walked into the Spring Thunder Palace. The one in the lead was a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator with grizzled hair, a short and fat figure, and 2 triangular eyes faintly flashing with a trace of light. Behind him were 2 12th-layer Qi refining disciples. One was at the early stage, and the other was at the peak of the late stage. Xiaohua recognized the peak late-stage Qi refining disciple. It was Wang Yunxiao, who entered the Imperial Thunder sect at the same time as him. It seems that the Foundation establishment senior in front should be Zhenyu. He was the one who snatched Wang Yunxiao away first. Xiaohua thought in his heart. He stole a glance at helplessness, and sure enough, helplessness's expression became somewhat unsightly. When Zhenyu entered the Spring Thunder Palace, his eyes flashed. He had already seen helplessness, so he didn't go anywhere and directly walked towards helplessness. Is there going to be a good show to watch? Xiaohua muttered in his heart and slightly lowered his head. Junior Marshal Brother Helplessness, Junior Marshal Sister Zhua? Zhenyu cupped his hands and saluted from afar. Helplessness also had no choice, so he could only return the salute and say, "Greetings, Senior Marshal Brother Zhenyu." Zhuo Minghui at the side also saluted and called him Senior Marshal Brother. After the 3 of them saluted, Zhenyu waved his hand and said to Wang Yunxiao, "Yunxiao, come and greet your Marshal Uncle Helplessness." Marshal Uncle Helplessness was the person I told you about earlier. When you were participating in the selection, he was the one who took a fancy to you first. It's a pity that he had an important matter to attend to that day and couldn't come. That's why I was able to take advantage of you and accept you as my disciple. Disciple Wang Yunxiao greets Marshal Uncle Helplessness. Many thanks for Marshal Uncle's good intentions that day. Wang Yunxiao was very courteous and very respectfully bowed to salute. Get up, I don't have the fortune to accept you as my disciple. It's really too convenient for your master. Helplessness said indifferently. Junior Marshal Brother, look at what you're saying. It seems like you're still blaming me. Zhenyu said with a smile. No matter if it's you or I, aren't we both disciples of the Thunderous Palace? Think about it. If I didn't accept Yunxiao into the Thunderous Palace and someone else took him first, wouldn't it be too convenient for the other Thunderous Palaces? Today, isn't Yunxiao representing the other Thunderous Palaces to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly? Moreover, isn't this disciple of yours not bad? Isn't he also representing my Thunderous Palace to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly? Look at this disciple of mine. He doesn't even dare to sign up for the selection. He's too far away from your disciple. Come, Yuqian, greet your Marshal Uncle Helplessness and this Senior Marshal Brother. It's indeed Jin Yuqian, Xiaohua thought. At this time, he also waved his hand helplessly and said, Xiaohua, come and greet your Marshal Uncle Zhenyu. Senior Marshal Brother Yunxiao and Junior Marshal Brother Yuqian. Yes, Xiaohua and Jin Yuqian both answered. They stepped forward and greeted their master first, then greeted each other. -7. Chapter 1595. After Xiaohua and Jin Yuqian greeted each other, Zhenyu waved his hand and said, Yuqian, don't be too affectionate. Xiaohua was the number 1 in the disciple selection that year. Furthermore, he participated in the Feather Immortal Assembly with the cultivation of early-stage level 12 Qi refining. He is indeed a role model for you to follow. Master, disciple has Senior Brother Yunxiao as a role model. Why would a disciple who only knows how to run for his life be a role model? Could it be that you also want disciple to piss his pants in terror and run away the moment he sees an enemy? Zhen Yuqian couldn't help but refute his master. Furthermore, I heard Senior Brother say that he didn't use his full strength that day. Otherwise, Xiaohua's number 1 position would be unknown. When these words came out, not only was Xiaohua greatly shocked, even Xiaohua himself opened his eyes wide. Xiaohua's heart wasn't angry, but rather, he couldn't help but want to laugh. Yes, it was a feeling of secretly laughing. There was a feeling of patting Zhen Yuqian's head and saying, good boy. This Jin Yuqian was truly of the highest quality. Not only did he offend Xiaohua with a single sentence, he even sold Wang Yunxiao out. Of course, the most important thing was that he refuted Jinyu in front of Xiaohua. A disciple with such aptitude could actually snatch my rainbow epiphyllum? Hee, even if you are late-stage qi refining, how can you be my opponent? Xiaohua sneered in his heart. He glanced at Wang Yunxiao, whose face was slightly red, but his gaze was fixed on the runes on the ceiling as if he didn't hear a word. Zhen Yuqian, Master, haven't you always told disciple to speak the truth? Disciple. Zhen Yuqian still felt wronged. Forget it. Go back first. Reflect on your mistakes in the reflection pavilion. Wait for me to return. Zhen Yu waved his hand powerlessly and said, Yes, disciple obeys. This time, Zhen Yuqian was well behaved. He cupped his hands and saluted Xiaohua before leaving the Spring Thunder Hall. Looking at Zhen Yuqian's back, Zhen Yu smiled apologetically and said, My sex disciple is unfilial. I've let junior brother helplessness see a joke. You flatter me, you flatter me. This kid's nature is frank and sincere. This is precisely the realm that we cultivators pursue. Congratulations, senior brother. Little brother is truly envious. Helplessly, he said in all seriousness. Xiaohua, who was at the side, had long burst out laughing. His expression was strange. Wang Yunxiao said in a low voice, Junior brother Xiao, my humble junior brother's knowledge is shallow and has spoken rudely. I hope junior brother can forgive me. No, no, no. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, Junior martial brother Zhen's nature is frank and sincere, which is exactly what little brother has been pursuing all my life. Little brother can't wait to be envious, so how could I have any complaints? Besides, what junior martial brother Zhen said is the truth. Xiaohua and helplessness's tone were the same. They were really a good pair of master and disciple. Zhen Yu was a little embarrassed. At this time, helplessness pointed his finger and shouted, Senior martial brother Zhen, look, the disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Earth Thunder Palace are here. Hearing this, Zhen Yu took the opportunity to turn his head. Looking at the group of men and women entering the door, he said in a low voice, Alas, among the 8 Thunder Palaces, the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Earth Thunder Palace are still the leaders. They have taken up more than half of the disciples participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Indeed, when Xiaohua took a closer look, among the disciples who came in from outside the Spring Thunder Palace, there were 10 male and female disciples in the 12th level of the Refinement Realm. They should be the disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Earth Thunder Palace who were participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly. The disciple in the middle level of the 12th level of the Refinement Realm that Xiaohua had seen before was also among them. That's right. The Feather Immortal Assembly has 20 disciples. Basically, the Jin, Dui, Can, Li, Zhen, and Sun Lightning Palaces can send out 2 disciples each. The remaining disciples are all from the Qian and Kuan Lightning Palaces. This time, my Heavenly Thunder Palace has 2 disciples, while the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Earth Thunder Palace have chosen 10. I wonder which Thunder Palace is short of disciples. Do you still need to say? It's definitely the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Heavenly Thunder Palace. The disciples they choose are all at the back, and it's difficult for them to become great talents. Humph. The Qian and Kuran Lightning Palaces have always selected disciples from the Imperial Lightning Sect. Moreover, every time they select disciples from the outside, those with the best aptitudes and the younger ones are always first picked by them. How can their disciples not be powerful? At this time, Zhen Yu was helpless. He looked at Wang Yunxiao and said, If Yunxiao came to my Imperial Thunder Sect 10 years ago, I'm afraid he would have been chosen by the Heavenly Thunder Palace. Hee, don't say that. Someone gave up the opportunity to be a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and wanted to choose other Thunder Palaces. Zhen Yu glanced at Xiaohua helplessly. It was hard to tell whether it was ridicule or gratification in his eyes. Junior brother, what did you learn to be careful? Which stupid disciple is it? Zhen Yu was very curious. He didn't connect this matter with Xiaohua at all. I also don't know who it is. I just casually heard other junior brothers talking about it. Zhen Yu's gaze turned towards the hall door as he said indifferently, Stupid as a cow? Damn it. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At this time, The 10 disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Earth Thunder Palace had already walked to the center of the Spring Thunder Hall. A slightly older disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace waved his hand and said, "Disciples, greet the masters of the other Thunder Palaces as well as the other fellow senior brothers and junior brothers." Yes. The 6 disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace stood where they were and replied in a loud and clear voice. Soon after, they uniformly bowed towards everyone in the Spring Thunder Hall and said, "Disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace greet martial uncles, senior brothers, and junior brothers." That voice was very loud and clear. Fortunately, there wasn't much dust on the Spring Thunder Hall. Otherwise, it would definitely have been shaken down. Xiaohua and the others also didn't dare to neglect and all returned the greeting. Immediately after, a female voice also called out without any trace of politeness, "Disciples of the Earth Thunder Palace also greet masters." Yes, 4 voices like the chirping of orioles rang out. "Disciples of the Earth Thunder Palace greet martial uncles and senior brothers." Although this voice wasn't as loud as the male disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace, it won in that it was crisp and didn't have an overbearing aura, making it refreshing to hear. Soon after, the disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Earth Thunder Palace walked to the front of the Spring Thunder Palace's high platform under the guidance of their masters and stood in their respective positions. And the atmosphere of the entire Spring Thunder Hall seemed to have become somewhat cold because of the arrival of these 2 disciples. "Master, over there are 2 old friends of this disciple. They are also disciples of famous aristocratic families. This disciple will go and meet their masters." Wang Yunxiao had already seen Yuan Bo and Min Gu long ago. He smiled and said to Zhenyu, "Won't you go and take a look?" Zhenyu was already unwilling to see Zhenyu's face and said with a smile, "Since they're your old friends, Master naturally has to go and take a look." Wang Yunxiao turned his head and said with a smile, "Junior brother Xiao, won't you come?" Xiaohua saw Yuan Bo and Min Gu earlier than Wang Yunxiao, but these 2 seemed to be different from before. They didn't seem too affectionate when they saw Xiaohua, so Xiaohua also pretended not to see them. Hearing this, he waved his hand and said, "Senior brother Wang, go ahead. We'll go together. We'll talk later." Zhenyu and Wang Yunxiao helplessly nodded to Xiaohua and left, walking towards where Yuan Bo and Min Gu were standing. Where's that female disciple called Sun Shu? I heard Xue say that she also qualified. Why didn't she come?" Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and looked around. Sure enough, he didn't see Sun Shu. Just as he was thinking, 2 figures hurriedly flashed past outside the Spring Thunder Hall. Xue? Xiaohua couldn't help but be surprised when he saw that figure. Everyone said that a foundation establishment master would send them off, but this Sun Shu was good, directly sending off a junior sister. Sun Shu's behavior was even more interesting. When she entered the Spring Thunder Hall, she first looked around. When she saw Xiaohua, she didn't have any expression on her face and walked towards him, completely ignoring the greeting of the female disciple who seemed to be from mythical Thunder Palace. Seeing the 2 beautiful female disciples walking towards him, Xiaohua was a bit stunned. Zhuo Minghui was puzzled at first, but when she saw Xiaohua also raise his head, she couldn't help but feel happy. Sure enough, Sun Shu and Xue walked in front of the 3 and bowed. "Disciple greets martial uncles." Xiaohua and Zhuo Minghui hurriedly returned the greeting, but Xiaohua was still puzzled. "Martial nephews, which junior sister of Sun Thunder Palace are you 2 disciples of?" "Martial uncles, disciple is Xue. Several years ago, I entered the Imperial Thunder Sect with Xiaohua. Wasn't martial uncles also at the Spring Thunder Hall that day?" Xue said very shyly. "You?" Xiaohua suddenly realized. Of course, Xiaohua wasn't present when Sun Ming accepted Xue, but when Sun Ming brought Xue to the Jade Archive Hall, didn't she invite Xiaohua along? Xiaohua even used Xue to tease Xiaohua, so he naturally had some impression of Xue. He should have remembered. It was no wonder that Xiaohua didn't connect Xue with his previous impression of her. The current Xue was different from several years ago. Not to mention that her cultivation was already at the beginning of the 9th layer of qi refining. Even her appearance had changed greatly. Her eyes were bright and kind, and her beauty was moving. Coupled with her snow-white skin and the gradually forming grace between her brows, she didn't look like the ugly duckling of the past. Since he knew she was Sun Ming's disciple, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly returned the greeting. Martial Uncle Sun Ming, how have you been? Why didn't she come to see you off? Sun Shu smiled. Master had some matters to attend to and couldn't leave, so she let disciple come. Junior sister Shui wanted to come out and get some fresh air, so she followed along. As he spoke, he glanced at Xiaohua. Xiaohua rubbed his nose and smiled. Shui, you've advanced really quickly. Congratulations. Congratulations. Shui said unhappily. Xiaohua, are you congratulating me or mocking me? You're already at the 12th layer of qi refining, and you're still congratulating me, a 9th layer of qi refining? Xiaohua chuckled. I'm just trying to find something to talk about. Hehe, Shui liked Xiaohua very much. She covered her mouth and laughed brilliantly. Beside her, Zhuo Minghui stepped forward and whispered, Shui, what kind of martial arts do you practice? Why do you look so beautiful? I'm afraid you were born with it? This kind of topic was a woman's favorite. Although Sun Shu was cold and elegant, she couldn't avoid it. While accompanying Shui and Zhuo Minghui, Xiaohua, who looked very innocent and kept rubbing his nose, Xiaohua. -7. Chapter 1596. Shui originally came to see Xiaohua, but when she saw Zhuo Minghui, she immediately started chatting with Zhuo Minghui. Zhuo Minghui also felt that Shui was more and more pleasing to the eye. She was very happy and left Xiaohua to the side. After a while, there was a slight commotion in front of them. Xiaohua looked up and saw several cultivators standing on the platform. The one in front was Jinqing, a golden core cultivator from Jinlei Palace. Beside him was a foundation establishment cultivator in the late stage. He had a beard on his face and looked very rude. The foundation establishment cultivator's voice was very loud and clear. He said, Are all the disciples from the various lightning palaces here? The Spring Thunder Hall was silent and no one answered. Xiaohua laughed secretly. He didn't know how that person would answer if there were still people who didn't come. Since all the disciples are here, we will set off immediately. I am Jinyu from Jinlei Palace. I am the deputy envoy of the Tai Ching sect in Ming Nation to participate in the Feather Immortal Conference. In order to ensure the safety of the disciples participating in the Feather Immortal Conference, Martial Uncle Jinqing from Jinlei Palace will be the envoy personally. Therefore, you don't have to worry about the safety of the disciples. After Jinyu finished speaking, he turned his head and seemed to ask Jinqing. Jinqing shook his head slightly and waved his hand. Lightning flashed and a pitch-black magic weapon flew out of the hall. Disciples, let's board the boat outside the hall. Jinyu shouted loudly and bowed to let Jinqing go first. Jinqing nodded slightly and stepped down from the platform. He cupped his hands at the disciples below and walked out of the Spring Thunder Hall. Then, the disciples of Qinku and Lightning Palace followed him out. Everyone moved. At this moment, Shui walked in front of Xiaohua and whispered, Xiaohua, you have to be careful. Xiaohua smiled and nodded. Don't worry. I think your senior sister has already told you how I passed. I will just take this trip as an eye-opener. Nothing will happen to me if I don't stand out. How did you pass? Could it be that there is something strange? Shui was slightly curious, but she didn't pursue the matter. She stretched out her hand and removed the storage pouch from her waist before passing it over, and then she said with slight embarrassment, The things within the storage pouch aren't much, but they were made by the talisman crafting disciples of my Thunderstorm Palace. Master gave them to me, so take them and use them today. Xiaohua took the storage pouch and opened it to take a look. Apart from a few spirit stones, there were also medicinal pills and talismans. Naturally, there were also a lot of fireball talismans. Shui continued softly, I don't know what kind of talisman you used, but seeing that you're here, the fireball charms used in the valley are very handy, so I took a few more. Haha, very good, very good. Xiaohua didn't hold back. He waved his hand and took away all the items in the storage pouch. Shui was happy when she saw that Xiaohua didn't treat her as an outsider. She took the storage pouch and said happily, I hope that you and my senior sister will be able to perform well in the Feather Immortal Gathering. Sun Shu smiled faintly and followed the crowd out of the Spring Thunder Hall. Behind them, Yuan Bo and Min Gu didn't look very good. Wang Yunxiao looked at the two of them meaningfully. Outside the Spring Thunder Hall, a small lightning boat was parked on the empty ground. The pitch-black boat had faint purple lightning and sparks flashing on it. Jin Qing was already standing at the bow of the boat with her hands behind her back. "All right, Xiaohua, you can go up now. Be careful." She stopped helplessly and said in a low voice, "The Feather Immortal Gathering is a good opportunity to make a name for yourself, but there are also certain risks. If you really want to focus on cultivation, you can just go and take a look." Xiaohua smiled when he saw that his master had finally relented. "Thank you for your understanding, master." She glared at him helplessly and said, "I'm not done yet. If there's a chance, why don't you show them a few moves and let them see the power of our myriad Thunder Valley?" "I understand," Xiaohua said with a smile. "You have to rely on yourself outside. Be careful. If there's anything wrong, follow your grandmaster closely." Zhuo Minghui also reminded him. Xiaohua looked at his master's wife, who was treating him like a child, and said with a smile, "I understand." Then, he looked at Shueshui and nodded slightly. He turned to Sun Shu and said with a smile, "Senior Sun, let's go." Sun Shu nodded and flew up the lightning boat with Xiaohua. The two of them stood at the edge of the lightning boat and waved at Helplessness and the others. When all the disciples boarded the lightning boat, Jin Qing waved her hand and cast a spell on the formation plate of the lightning boat. The lightning boat buzzed and immediately flew into the sky and flew away at an extremely fast speed. When the lightning boat disappeared, Zhuo Minghui smiled and said to Shueshui in front of the Spring Thunder Hall, "Shueshui, if you're free after cultivating, can you come to the Myriad Thunder Valley for a chat?" Shueshui's face was slightly red. She bowed and said, I still have to tell Master. If Master agrees, I'll definitely go. I will take my leave first." After Shueshui flew away, Helplessness and Zhuo Minghui also flew to the Myriad Thunder Valley. In the sky, Helplessness sighed. "Xiaohua, this brat. Instead of cultivating properly, he's actually thinking about dual cultivation. However, this Shueshui is really not bad. Then Sun Shu is also good," Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. "Two?" Helplessness curled her lips and said, "Can Xiaohua handle it? Is he still cultivating?" Putting aside Helplessness and Zhuo Minghui worrying about Xiaohua's cultivation, on the lightning boat, Xiaohua was originally standing together with Sun Shu. However, when the surrounding people were sitting cross-legged, cultivating or whispering, the two of them became awkward. Sun Shu looked at the disciples of distant Thunder Palace in the distance and said, "I will go over there and see junior sister. Senior sister Sun, please." Xiaohua quickly said, "Disciple also needs to cultivate." After Sun Shu left, Xiaohua immediately sat down and took out a soul-gathering pill from his storage bag. He ate it and closed his eyes to cultivate. The lightning boat was extremely fast, but Ming country was indeed far away. For more than 10 days, the lightning boat didn't stop at all, but they still didn't reach Ming country. During this time, Xiaohua ignored everyone and only hid in a corner of the lightning boat to cultivate. Wang Yunxiao and the other two looked at Xiaohua's appearance and also extinguished the thought of catching up with him. Instead, they found an opportunity to sit together with the disciples of Distant Thunder Palace and Converted Thunder Palace. Looking at the 10 disciples of Heavenly Thunder Palace and Earth Thunder Palace, they seemed to have a feeling of superiority. They only talked to these 2 disciples of Heavenly Thunder Palace and ignored the others who went to talk to them. After a long time, no one went to eat soft rebuffs. The lightning boat was controlled by Jin Qing and Jin Yu. The two of them took turns to rest and didn't interfere much with the movements of the 20 disciples. However, when they occasionally saw the indifference and arrogance of the disciples of Heavenly Thunder Palace, Jin Qing slightly frowned. Of course, Jin Qing also paid attention to Xiaohua. After all, Xiaohua was the only one who closed his eyes and cultivated the moment he boarded the Thunder ship. He didn't talk to anyone at all. Furthermore, he had met Xiaohua during the disciple selection. He was also the one who gave Xiaohua the concealed flame physique. Therefore, when he saw Xiaohua reach the early stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm in just a few years, Jin Qing couldn't help but nod her head slightly. On this day, it was a dreary and misty day. Raindrops fell from the sky and hit the lightning boat. The lightning boat originally had a defensive brilliance, but Jin Qing seemed to like this weather. He actually removed the defensive formation, allowing the raindrops to hit his body. A strong wind blew everyone's clothes and long hair. Woo-woo, the sound of a flute sobbed. Sitting upright on the lightning boat, Jin Qing started to play his flute. Xiao Hua was cultivating when he suddenly heard the mournful sound of the flute. The true qi flowing in his meridians became sluggish at first, then it actually started to flow with the flute sound. Xiao Hua felt as if he was at the lakeside of a drizzling lake. The mirror-like surface of the lake was disrupted by the raindrops. Countless black dots formed on the surface of the lake, making a pitter-patter-patter sound. That sound was like a chaotic state of mind, unable to calm down. There was a faint mist by the lakeside. Xiao Hua felt that there seemed to be a person he was worried about in the mist. However, the mournful voice separated him from that person. He couldn't see her clearly, nor could he touch her. Xiao Hua's heart was filled with grief. He tried his best to rush into the mist, wanting to see what was going on. However, the more hurried he was, the more confused he became. He walked through the grass by the lakeside and walked through the forest by the lakeside. All along, he could only see a corner of a pure white dress fluttering in front of his eyes. At this moment, the sound of the flute suddenly became louder. It was like a strong ray of sunlight, piercing through the mist. The pure white dress suddenly flashed, and the graceful figure suddenly turned around. What entered Xiao Hua's eyes was a beautiful face. That face seemed unfamiliar yet familiar. Only the beauty mole on the left side of the chin was particularly eye-catching. Dream? Xiao Hua couldn't help but groan. Fairy Hongxia? With this call, Xiao Hua suddenly woke up. He didn't dare to be negligent in the slightest and hurriedly entered the space. It was very easy for him to comprehend the heavenly Tao. He no longer paid attention to Jin Qing's disturbing flute sound. However, Xiao Hua, who had always been emotionless during cultivation, had a drop of sparkling and translucent tear seeping out from the corner of his eye. Xiao Hua sank into cultivation. After an unknown period of time, his entire body suddenly trembled violently, and he was jolted awake from his cultivation. Io, what's going on? Xiao Hua opened his eyes and saw that it was actually chaos. The entire thunder ship was shaking violently. Everyone on the thunder ship couldn't stand steadily and was floating in the air. As for Jin Qing, she had already put away her flute somewhere. She flew out of the thunder ship and released her divine sense to observe carefully. Xiao Hua frowned. He didn't fly up in a hurry. Instead, the true qi in his body moved slightly. His entire body was nailed to the thunder ship in a very strange manner. Why are there tears at the corner of my eyes? Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong with his face. He used his hand to wipe away the tears. At this moment, he heard Jin Qing's somewhat nervous voice. Jinyu, control the thunder ship first. I will go down and take a look. Yes, disciple obeys. Jinyu replied. Just as he was about to control the thunder ship, a spirit beast that looked very similar to a leopard suddenly flew out from the pitch-black clouds below the thunder ship. It crashed into the bottom of the thunder ship, causing the thunder ship to almost capsize. The people on the thunder ship were also swaying left and right. 7. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.